30 years have passed since the prologue CH-120. I became possessed by a game I've never seen before. Thinking it was a classic RPG, I spent 30 years in it. I retired as a war hero and was planning to spend the rest of my time leisurely. But it turns out, it was an academy story. Chapter 1. 1-to-1. 30 years since the prologue. It's a strange ceiling, Kim Sun-woo muttered in a calm voice. No, it wasn't all that calm. He was trembling so much that his hands were shaking with excitement. How long had he been waiting for this moment? A foreign ceiling, a foreign world, yes. Another world reincarnation, transmigration, rebirth, whatever you called it. In reality, he had been preparing for this moment for a very long time. The important point here is the preparation. If you're a citizen of South Korea, you would already know the basic conditions for another world reincarnation. It's the submission of a 5,700 character critique of gratitude, and reading until completion. Building on that, you can understand Kim Sun-woo's preparation process. Every novel, webtoon, and game he had read, any work that he liked. In other words, the act of submitting a 5,700 character critique for all the works he wanted to be reincarnated into. Every day, without rest, with a different repertoire each time, meticulously and thoroughly. Since it was the work he wanted to be reincarnated into, he naturally memorized the story, settings, possible hidden plots, artifacts, and character relationships of the main characters. Only the 5,700 characters to break the creator's heart, until he heard the words, then give it a try. Of course, in most cases, it ended with the desperate pleas of unyielding authors or being blocked by various community members. But in the end, he succeeded. He had finally been reincarnated into another world. Now, all that remained was to find out what kind of work this was. Only that status window, a colorful augmented reality blue display, did not appear. But that was okay. He wasn't disappointed. In the list of works where he had left negative comments, there were many works without a status window. In fact, he considered it a clue to narrow down the list. Moreover, he now had the body of a child who had just turned 4. Time and abilities were practically on his side. The tattered clothes and shabby ceiling were fine by him. A genius of this caliber in a place like this? Truly a remarkable hero. I'll give you my throne and wealth. Just spare my life. It had already been proven through various media on Earth that the more difficult the childhood, the greater the success. Kim Sun-woo smiled slyly and got up from his seat. First of all, yes, why not start with something simple, like making soap? 4 years old. First week of reincarnation. Kim Sun-woo realized that his body had the name Ivan Petrovich. His parents were tenant farmers, and he was shocked to discover that they were ignorant even to the extent of not knowing their own country's name, let alone the letters. After failing at making soap, he felt a bitter regret for playing around with lye. In fact, he discovered that soap already existed in this world. At the age of 4, in the 6th week of his reincarnation, Kim Sun-woo finally gained the freedom to wander around the village through the errand of delivering eggs. As he glanced at a newspaper rolling on the ground, he began to sense something peculiar. If society is advanced enough to produce newspapers and distribute them to a rural area like this, it's definitely not the Middle Ages, right? Most of his reincarnation works list was deleted that day. At the age of 4, in the 15th week of his reincarnation, Kim Sun-woo finally heard the name of the country he lived in. After hearing the name of the king, who was vaguely referred to as Naratnim, he immediately returned home and threw his precious reincarnation works list into the fire in a corner of his room. Because the country he heard, the ruler he heard, and all the surrounding kingdoms were names heard for the first time. Now, what mattered wasn't which work he had reincarnated into, but what genre is this, exactly? Please, let it not be dark fantasy. The survival rate of a modern Korean without any special bonuses or status screens is usually less than 5%. At the age of 8, in the 4th year of his reincarnation, surprisingly, the Demon King appeared out of nowhere. The war was still a distant story from a faraway land, but the daily broadcasts were filled with grim tales. At the age of 8 in winter, Kim Sun-woo's, no, Ivan's father was conscripted by the draft officer and left. Ivan's mother began to foster him to keep him alive. From here, Kim Sun-woo's sense of self began to slightly deviate. At the age of 10, in the 6th year of his reincarnation, Kim Sun-woo could now adeptly handle foster care tasks alongside his mother. At the age of 12, in the 8th year of his reincarnation, Kim Sun-woo finally learned to read. It was the payment for surreptitiously taking eggs from the village chief's house for 6 years. At the age of 14, in the 10th year of his reincarnation, the news of his father's death reached his village. Interestingly, it was a notice issued 2 years ago. Accepting a few coins in exchange for the value of a life, he looked at his sobbing mother and thought of 2 things. One was the genre of this world being a strategy simulation. Somehow, it felt too detailed. If it were an RPG, so many countries wouldn't typically appear. After all, isn't it normal not to implement backgrounds that players can't experience? However, this isn't a novel or a webtoon. It wasn't just an ordinary otherworld story. It was a world where subtle settings thrived. Simple firearms and steam engines, knights and wizards, demons, and diverse races coexisting. The evidence lay in this world. Writing a world like this in a novel would elicit comments like, "What's this, some niche fantasy? Or just talking about things only they know?" So, serializing it for free with a predictable ending seemed futile. Hence, naturally, I had to take action. Living as a mere farmer in this backward place meant I'd never step into the main storyline forever if I lived and died here. The endings of strategy simulations usually culminate in world domination, but ending up conquered by the demon army without knowing anything was something to avoid, wasn't it? And the second thought that crossed my mind was, "Don't worry, Mother." I gently brushed the hair of my mother, exhausted from weeping, and submitted my enlistment to the recruitment office. A salary of 15 Eastern coins. I had contractually agreed to send it all to my mother. Ivan Petrovich hoped these hands would no longer beg for her. More than an abrupt sense of filial duty, it was a remorse for inhabiting the body of a young boy named Ivan, essentially ending her only offspring. 18 years old. 14 years since inhabiting. 4 years in the military. Thanks to minor military honors and strokes of luck, Ivan's status shifted from conscripted to regular army. I realized Ivan's body had more aptitude for fighting than expected. 22 years old. 18 years since inhabiting. 8 years in the military. When the front lines pushed dangerously ahead and half of the Allied nations burned, a hero emerged. At this point, Ivan finally realized the genre of this world. It was a hero's tale, a true blue RPG. But the hero was just a story from a distant land, and the front line Ivan fought on remained bleak. 28 years old. 24 years since inhabiting. 14 years in the military. As the hero party intercepted the commanders of the demon army, the tides turned. Now, Ivan was assigned to the Recovery Zone Domination and Enemy Faction Detection Unit. To put this lengthy title simply, Annihilation Unit. It was a specialized force deployed when chaos erupted in the enemy lines upon the death of enemy commanders. For about a year from then, Ivan traveled with the hero party using military camps. 30 years old. 26 years since inhabiting. 16 years in the military. The hero party killed the Demon King. Ivan had now decided to wait for the ending. It was a feeling of wanting to escape from this tiresome world. 32 years old. Inhabiting for the 28th year. 2 years had passed since the Demon King's death, but there was still no ending. During that time, the personnel of the Annihilation Unit had decreased to 1/5 of its original size. Realizing that superiors were attempting to disband them at a point where no new recruits were being replenished, Ivan performed what was essentially his last mission. Recognizing the situation as a prolonged epilogue, he applied for discharge. His hometown mother had passed away a decade ago, leaving him entirely alone. He established an orphanage near the capital, taking in war orphans. It was a small act of hypocrisy. 34 years old. Inhabiting for the 30th year. Still, even now, the ending credits were nowhere in sight. The thought that it might not have been an RPG at all became a certainty for a guest who visited the orphanage. Damn. Yes, damn. Was this supposed to be an academy novel? Senior. The guest awkwardly smiled at the orphanage director. War hero. 18 years of military service. Annihilation Unit veteran. Friendly with the hero party, who suddenly spat out profanity. The guest, dispatched from the palace, broke out in a cold sweat recalling the numerous nicknames of the orphanage director. The king's consort, lumberjack, dragon slayer, the man who slaughtered the 7 dragons, immortal, reserve force, the living legend of conscripted soldiers. As the ominous man, who had the demeanor to chop off heads with an axe if he made a slip of the tongue, smiled awkwardly, The guest quietly held his breath until the orphanage director's anger subsided. Chapter 2. 2-2. Retired soldiers want to rest. Ivan, who had been waiting for the ending with a comfortable heart, thinking only of escaping this tiresome other world and enjoying a cool can of beer, finally realized at this point that all his experiences were nothing but background settings. And the genre of this game was not just a strategy simulation to withstand the fierce war against the demon army. This wasn't the typical RPG where a hero organized a party to overthrow the Demon King's tyranny. Rather, it was an academy story, he realized. Up to this point, Ivan had been immersed in this alternate reality for 30 years. Episode 2. Retired soldier wants a break. The Saint Basilica orphanage was one of the wealthiest in the kingdom. Typically, for an orphanage to be wealthy, it needed a few conditions. Either it had a favorable location within the administrative influence of the capital, or it held political symbolism, such as being the first orphanage for war orphans when the war-torn kingdom began its reconstruction. Surprisingly, if the orphanage director had connections with influential members of society and high-ranking nobles, along with fulfilling some other miscellaneous criteria, they could create a rebelliously affluent organization called a wealthy orphanage. By the way, the Saint Basilica orphanage met all these conditions. Ivan furrowed his brow, absent-mindedly stroking the goosebumps rising on his arms. If there was anything he had learned from his long military service, it was not to ignore the ominous feeling that something bad was about to happen. Kids, spread the salt. Yes, sir. Watching the children skip away giggling, he heaved a deep sigh. It had been 4 years since the Demon King died, yet the game wouldn't end. Was there a problem with an epilogue being this long? Was there another condition? It couldn't be something like the ending condition being the hero grows old and dies, right? He wanted to go back sooner than that. By this time, Ivan was painstakingly digging through fading memories, diligently compiling a list of things to eat when he returns to Earth. With the anticipation of a sergeant waiting for the day of discharge, desperately. From noblemtl.com. Canned beer, raw cuttlefish, honey butter chips, nachos with cheese sauce, tuna mayo, kimchi stew. Oh, damn it, underline kimchi stew 3 more times. It's been 30 years since he last had kimchi. You can't leave out kimchi stew or stir-fried kimchi. And all kinds of alcohol except vodka and wine. If possible, he wanted to drink Northeast Asian liquor. Living among monsters who eat pickled cucumbers and pickled mushrooms as snacks makes you miss even the exaggerated bubble pops. Phew. Ivan, moving with little strength, suddenly stopped. In his office, where no one should be, he heard a sound. An adult's sound, and one well trained as a soldier. The eyes that were relaxed just a moment ago sharpened. Then, cautiously, he took a step forward. This time, not silencing his footsteps, but trying to be as natural as possible. Thump, thump, as if he hadn't felt anything, emphasizing his vulnerable state. He walked in a straight line to the wooden door with the sign director's office. Just one person. His senses were already in the realm of animals. Anyone who had rolled with the extinction unit for several years could perform such acrobatics. The popular movement behind the wooden door paused abruptly. Gauging his position, he slowly put his hand on his hip and slightly bowed his waist. Even if the door were to open and the opponent shot a gun, he could still deflect the trajectory away from his head. It was a long-standing habit. Long time no see, senior. As soon as he turned the doorknob, a stranger cheerfully shouted. It meant there was no intention of attack. Ivan, upon hearing the voice, quickly identified the person's identity and relaxed his shoulders. As the door opened completely, a neatly dressed soldier waved at him. How have you been? Oh, I should have visited more often. You should have come through the main gate. Oh, have we ever worked that way? The soldier chuckled and stepped back shortly. His gaze briefly brushed over Ivan's waist and sleeves. Business. It's urgent. Let's have a drink first, share some old stories, and then we can talk about business. While saying so, he pulled out a small piece of paper from his pocket. Carefully, with his gloved hand, he placed the letter on the table. High-quality paper and well-made wax seal. Stamped firmly on it was a chrysanthemum flower. As soon as Ivan confirmed it, he reflexively stepped back from the table. Ah, is that a sacrilege? Why would Colonel Kirillov summon me? He's now the Minister of the Interior. When you retired, you were just a major. So why is he looking for me? If I remember correctly, when I retired, he clearly said. Yes, he told you to live quietly without attracting attention. It's impressive that you left believing that. The princess hasn't eaten for 3 days, by the way. He chuckled and pushed the letter, which had been pushed to the end of the table, back towards Ivan. Read it. If it's a letter from the princess, it's worth bidding on at the antique auction. Cautiously reaching out as if disassembling a magical device just before it explodes, Ivan carefully opened the letter, being mindful not to crumple the wax seal. With a satisfying sensation, the letter envelope gently unfolded. When a letter with a mix of gold threads appeared, his hand abruptly stopped. Why like this? She could have just asked about my well-being, couldn't she? Stubborn Elizaveta Kirillovna Kraslov. During the height of the front lines, she was affectionately known by the slightly more familiar nickname, Riser of Iron. It's not like her to send envoys just to ask a simple "how are you?" Might as well be a woman who wrote poison on the paper. Surely there's no poison here. Just read it. Ivan hesitated once more before summoning the courage to open the letter. A neatly written letter, as if typed on a typewriter, with elegant penmanship, emerged. Vanka, how have you been? Already, it's unpleasant to read. Ivan swallowed dryly. Occasionally, I heard news of you. Seemed like you were doing well. I thought it was fortunate for the first few months, but since then, it hasn't been. Unfortunately, I'm not doing well right now. Even if you don't know who she is, she must be paying the price for making this woman not do well. Do you remember when we struggled to cultivate the garden together? We hoped to have a tea party together, but you left without even looking back. The time when they burned down the demon residential area, established a military government, and exploited the peaceful demons? Of course, he remembers. After that, I had a moment of thinking like this. Well, fine. Even if you're not here, Vanka, this garden that we worked so hard to cultivate won't fall apart. Winter has passed, and when the snow melts, the season of blooming flowers will come. Then, maybe someday, you might come to see the garden you created. Ivan murmured unknowingly. Me? In the palace? Why? But the seasons are turning, and winter is coming again, Vanka. The people are full, and the lazy ones no longer pay attention to the garden. Between the overgrown weeds and wild beasts, flowers no longer bloom in the garden. A colder and quieter winter than last year is coming. Somewhere, on the dying shrub, you can see something covering it. Now he understood the purpose of this letter. Before reading the last paragraph, Ivan involuntarily sighed deeply. Vanka, the woodsman I trust the most. If there's a wish, I'll surely repay it threefold. If the price falls short, we'll compensate with our friendship. And if even that doesn't suffice, we'll settle with our memories. The kingdom still requires your dedication, just as it has been until now. Onwards too, with affection, Kirillovna. After carefully reading the brief letter several times, he turned his stiffened gaze away, pressing his temples firmly. Any response? The situation first. It's quite challenging. The military administration pleads daily for withdrawal, while Prince Alexander is eager to divide and sell off the country into 5 parts. And our great king remains seated, saying nothing as usual. The man continued, his voice tinged with discontent. But guess what? Remember the St. Jansk University, the international institution established during the war? What about it? I got hold of this year's list of new students and faculty in advance. Would you like to see? Handing a notebook to Ivan, he continued, a saintly figure took a teaching position in theology. And aside from that, the students, well, familiar names just keep coming, don't they? Daughter of the warrior Maximilian, Isabel. Son of the knight Gilles, Oscar. Daughter of the sorcerer Vilgreen, Elfira. Daughter of the berserker Anna, Esides. Apprentice of the rogue Enrique, Lucia. And even this year's newly appointed professor, Saint Patricia. A picture-perfect assembly of hero party members. And wouldn't you know, our illustrious sovereign abolished the age restriction for St. Jansk University admissions, right? Just said that as long as you take the entrance exam, age doesn't matter, and this is the result. St. Jansk University, a prestigious institution renowned throughout the unified kingdoms, disregards the age of its applicants, regardless of being too young or too old. Fairly and harshly, irrespective of age, it opens its doors to anyone who passes the excruciatingly difficult entrance exams, interviews, and conditions such as recommendation letters. Here, a problem arises. After killing the Demon King, the party of warriors each set off toward their hometowns. Some became nobles, and some sought refuge. However, If there is one commonality, it is this: every member of that party is revered as a legendary hero in their respective hometowns. Each of their actions could potentially cause international conflicts, especially for those who sent their children abroad for education. Our prince intends to sell the country. Oh, what a world! Just when such an incident occurs in the capital, what will happen now? If anyone in this group dies or gets injured, it would be the end of the country. What should I do then? I've reserved a position on the faculty, not as a professor or assistant, but as a gardener. Well, universities do have trees, don't they? The man spoke, tracing the names on the list with his fingers. Keep an eye on them for just 3 years, until these guys return to their own countries without a scratch. It might be shorter if they drop out. At this point, Ivan's calculations were complete. Colonel Kirilovna. In other words, our princess, Her Highness, urgently needs an agent who is not currently stationed in the military. Using an active duty agent might leave traces, risking exposure to the prince's faction. On the other hand, selecting any retired agent poses the risk of not knowing who may have ties to the prince's faction. However, Tardier, there was a perfect individual located near the capital. Unquestionable loyalty, proven abilities, and a clear position after retiring. Completely unrelated to politics. Someone who could be contacted quietly. The miraculous figure was none other than Ivan. Quietly waiting for the ending, ready to cross over to Earth and savor the delights of modern civilization. Ivan suddenly realized an astonishing fact at this moment. Instead of the warrior party celebrating a happy ending after the Demon King's death, in the backdrop of a chaotic international situation and a gloomy domestic political scene, suddenly, the world's dignitaries are eagerly enrolling their children in this international university that has popped up out of nowhere. After a long 30 years, a genre familiar to every citizen of South Korea came to mind. Oh, damn. What? Kim Sun-woo, who had been dormant for many years, suddenly woke up. Damn. Wasn't this supposed to be an academy? Senior. The man looked at Ivan with cold sweat dripping from his forehead. It was a rare sight even during his active duty days, a vehement expression of unleashed anger, and, naturally, during his active duty days, as someone who knew him well, my body stiffened at the steady flow of vitality emanating from him. Sweating coldly, just as I was about to ponder what those words meant, Ivan closed his eyes tightly, and with great effort, he restrained and controlled the boiling anger of Kim Sun-woo, saying, Ivan Petrovich, I bear the command. Now let's go home. 3 years. Waited for 30 years, and now just 3 more years seemed trivial. If you wait 3 more years, you can see the ending. This was the process of how a gardener came to be at the academy. From noblemtl.com. Chapter 3. 3-3. There must be a terror incident on the academy admission train. 1. Every genre has its formula, what is called a cliché. When you think about it, it's natural. In order for a set form of a specific genre to be established, there must be common elements. For example, let's look at the classic hero genre. According to Ivan's thoughts, the format of this TAS genre is as follows. The demon lord or antagonist appears. The hero forms a party. The hero embarks on a journey to defeat the demon lord. The process of defeating the subordinates of the demon lord one by one occurs. One of the subordinates becomes enamored with the hero. At the end of the journey, the demon lord dies, and the world regains peace. Ivan, based on this format, considered this world to be a classic hero genre. But now, Ivan was painstakingly extracting the memories of Kim Sun-woo from 30 years ago and compiling a list. What is the formula for academy stories? Ep 3. There must be a terror incident on the academy admission train. The princess lamented, as if she could be from the Stark family. Winter is coming, but that was wrong. It is now January. Obviously, it's midwinter, and not long ago, they even had an extravagant New Year's party at the orphanage. In other words, there was still plenty of time before the university started its semester. Academy. Ivan, now lost in thought, fondly recalled the impulsive burning of his reference book 30 years ago. Among them, he remembers there were probably a few academy-related ones. Now, he doesn't remember the names well, but it seemed to involve things like celestial horses going to the academy, or a swordsman going, or a shaman going, or a sorcerer going. If I were to jot down things that come to mind in a hurry, it would go something like this. They're like some sort of academy regulations. Anything can come to the academy. Literally, anything from cowboys to celestial beings, anything can come. So, That means even assassins who lurk behind the precious sons and daughters of the hero party are included. The academy is bound to be invaded. Sadly, the academy suffers more invasions than a frontline fortress. Statistically, it's widely known that if the protagonist doesn't drop out, there's a 98% chance the academy will be invaded. Demons hide within the academy. With the Demon King dead, all 7 dragon generals gone or missing, and demons either enslaved or pushed to the ends of the world at this point. Suddenly, in the heart of the United Kingdoms, disregarding any plausible way they could just infiltrate an educational institution, it means supporters of demons or the demons themselves will definitely sneak into the academy. Let's exclude races like goblins or orcs. They don't have the appearance to hide even if they tried. It's better to assume beings capable of shapeshifting like succubi or demons are the ones hiding. There are traitors among the undergraduates and staff. You have to search for staff so hostile to the protagonist that it's oddly suspicious. That person is likely a demon sympathizer. There are secret ruins or hidden artifacts within the academy. Jansk University, established just a decade ago, a newly built state university commissioned by the king himself in the capital, yet for some reason, it's assumed there are secret rooms within. The undergraduate students at the academy can be broadly divided into 3 types: students, antagonists related to demons, and government agents. Here, students don't necessarily refer to model students who study diligently. These guys are ticking time bombs as well. They're prone to getting into trouble, often needing rescue, and unfortunately, the protagonist is the only one who can save them. Apart from those students, the ones not getting into trouble are further divided into 2 categories: the quiet students whose names are barely mentioned and the students jealous of the protagonist. Up until this point, it could be considered part of an adorable school life. The problem lies ahead. Students related to demons. In reality, these are individuals who should be classified as demon sympathizers, demon spies, or demon zealots. If they stand out, eliminate them beforehand. The director, a former commanding officer from the Annihilation Unit, squinted and underlined the sentence. The best way to protect allies was to annihilate enemies. Up until now, it's nothing more than ordinary hobbies or the like. Next to the government agents, if the children of international dignitaries have enrolled in large numbers, it is only natural that agents would be dispatched to protect them. The problem is that, in most cases, agents do not embark on expeditions for the sole purpose of carrying out one mission. In other words, the bodyguards for these children would, in their leisure time, operate as excellent spies for the friendly nations. These individuals cannot be easily eliminated. Since they are not citizens of the host country, any attempt to harm them immediately becomes a diplomatic issue. After all, on the surface, they are just students. If there's no age limit, it wouldn't be strange for active duty agents to enroll during wartime. Ivan, the orphanage director and former Special Forces officer, stroked his chin in contemplation. It might be better if those who know come. At least we can communicate with them. Ivan looked at the battle axe displayed on the wall near the entrance to the director's office, lost in thought. Considering the academy's exams, training, and other situations, if an instructor says it's safe, crises are sure to follow. This is the reason why companies abolish their own safety inspection systems and outsource all safety inspections. Given the nature of the academy, where there are more spies, assassins, demons, and traitors than students, the only safe place is probably the principal's office. Even Dumbledore didn't die outside the principal's office. Normally, the principal or dean is a position that should be handled by an administrator. Strangely, in the academy, it was common sense for the principal to be the strongest in the world. Next, the most important thing. Let's recall the ending conditions of the academy genre. The ending conditions of the academy are survival and world peace. Wait just a moment. If this world is the academy genre, and everything that has happened so far is just a background event, let's summarize. The Demon King appeared, a hero killed the Demon King, and the world regained peace. At this point, 4 years after the end of the war, the United Kingdom is on the brink of falling apart. Each nation is now focusing on rebuilding, but competition for resources and colonial disputes are escalating. In the numerous occupied territories that were once the stronghold of demons, military administrations from various countries are still exploiting demon slaves. At this point, what could be considered the main story? World War? No, That's not it. In the academy genre, the protagonists are individuals in and around university level, not just high school students. If a grand war called a world war were to break out, the limitations for such students to play an active role would be too clear. So then, the resurrection of the Demon King. Ivan took a sip of his coffee and stared at his notebook with sunken eyes. No matter how you look at it, that seems to be the most logical. The story of the descendants of the hero party confronting the resurrected Demon King to restore peace to the world. Assuming the resurrection of the Demon King is a constant, and assuming that students drop out around the second year. If we anticipate that the academy invasion will occur at least 1 year later. What needs to be done right now? He added one more sentence to the memo paper and then got up, grabbing his coat. It's a sure thing that there will be a terrorist attack on the academy entrance train, or transportation. Ever since Harry Potter, in the world of trains, academy admissions always used the train. In some cases, carriages were also used. The commonality between trains and carriages was that both were vulnerable to terrorism. In fact, all modes of transportation were vulnerable to terrorism. There was no difference in walking, and this United Kingdom continued to use the military supply trains that had been laid down fiercely during the war as civilian transportation trains. Of course, even military supply trains were vulnerable to terrorism. Ivan's 18 years of military service could attest to that. Since the demons also enjoyed using trains for inland military supply, Ivan had dealt with train terrorism so many times, both preventing and perpetrating it, that it was the routine for the Extinction Squad. Ivan missed South Korea today too. Riding the train, it was a peaceful world where the only thing you had to worry about was not terrorism or demons, but rather battles over seaweed and tuna kimbap. Mukbangsuk and tuna kimbap had been added to Ivan's shopping list for when I return to Earth. Watch and see. Seriously, watch me. Everyone, watch how successful I am. Carrying a musical instrument bag and a suitcase, Esides stood on the train platform and looked around the crowd with enthusiasm. The crowd was holding up large placards to welcome her. Princess of King Inna, top admission to St. Jansky University. Not even close to being the top. But Esides didn't argue. Those people had deliberately put up that wording to enjoy her reaction. Proud. The best in the Driven Kingdom. A beauty. Continuing the blood of the great conqueror King Inna, she challenges orchestral domination. Orchestral domination? Who cares? Esides screamed and turned around to board the train. Laughter echoed behind her. Bad people. They couldn't even cheer for her. As the train departed, she buried her face between her sleeves and sobbed as she moved away. The crowd watching her from behind the train window dispersed with a loud commotion. Miss, I'm sure you can stay strong. What do you care? You're not her relative. Those Kraslov Kingdom guys are so weird, I can't trust them at all. But still, her elders didn't send her alone. She'll be fine. The crowd that had mocked Esides, the retinue of King Inna, left with their concerns expressed. Esides Inalstota, the warrior princess of the hero party. Butcher Inna Ulrichson's daughter. Admission to the music department symphony orchestra at St. Jansky University. The very train that Anna's procession had given a grand farewell to, 2 days later, derailed near the border of the kingdom of Kraslov. Naturally, Ivan was not surprised that the admission train departing for the academy was entangled in terrorism. Instead, he gripped a pistol and an axe. Chapter 4:4-3. Terrorism always occurs on the academy admission train, too. When asked by freshmen why the United Kingdom was called the Union Kingdom, Ivan would suggest they look at the train route map. During the war with the Demon King, this massive railway network, carrying military supplies, served as a vital artery connecting not only cities but also nations. Metal beasts that could cover the vast distances that would take over 10 days by carriage in just 1 day. The true heroes of the past war. Who's arriving first? It's Anna from Dren, Senior. Princess Esides is expected to be the first to depart. Still in January? Yeah, that's what I heard. Who in their right mind comes 2 months in advance to wait for the admission day? Even the royal family. Such a nuisance. The guy laughed cleverly. It seems Princess Esides had a tough time from her hometown. Well, I guess the folks in Dren must find playing instruments amusing. Instruments? Oh, didn't I mention it? Princess Esides applied to the music department, majoring in the symphony orchestra, specializing in the violin. Isn't that amazing? The bloodline of that King Anna as a violinist. Ivan paused for a moment upon hearing that. The Anna he remembered, before becoming a king. Anna, a member of the warrior party, wielding 2 axes, collecting orc heads in the morning and minotaur heads in the evening, a madman. Ha 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 ha, look at this little Ivan. This is how you wield an axe. Usually, daughters don't resemble their fathers. No, number. It's been several years, but the faint image of Esidas that came to mind was that of a slender little girl. She adored her father. Actually, there were hardly any resemblances. Fortunately, for everyone. Anyway, it seems the strongest music student is about to be born. Ivan left a brief reflection. From noblemtl.com. Esidas may not resemble her father in appearance and personality, but when it comes to wielding an axe, she took after him. By the way, senior, are you sure about this information that there will be a real terrorist attack on the train? Yeah. Who is it? Well, if you ask who it is, there are too many sharp-tongued folks around. But still, she's Princess Anna. If caught, you'll face the Eagle of Blood. The Eagle of Blood is the most favored folk game among the citizens of Drowan. Roughly speaking, it holds a status similar to traditional games played during holidays or festivities, like Yatnori or swing rides, at least in the sense that many people gathered to watch. The details are too gruesome to be explained to the civilized society citizens of the Kingdom of Kraslov. If you follow the shortest route from Drowan to Yansk University, here. Ivan ignored the guy's words and drew a thin solid line on the route map. Route 12. One of the trade routes connecting the Kingdom of Kraslov to the Kingdom of Drowan, and presumably, this place, Igorbachi Station. It seems to be the most likely. How can you be so sure? Who would announce a terrorist attack in advance and not so people? Senpai, did you plant someone? Well, they'll set it off near the border. Who will carry out the terrorist attack is unknown. It's unpredictable. They have withdrawn from the front lines, and they are not connected to intelligence agencies. But speculation is possible, assuming that the terrorist act itself is a constant. Now, match why, who, and how one by one. The purpose of the terror would be Princess Esidas, right? Well, if a real terrorist attack happens, then yes. Why? What? Of course, to create conflict elements between Kraslov and Drowan. Up to this point, it's natural. In that case, there won't be any terrorism south of the Drowan border. To shift the blame to the Kingdom of Kraslov, it must happen within our border. Yes, that makes sense, right? But once this route passes Igorbachi Station, it goes through 3 military zones in total. Even if trains are vulnerable to terrorism, it's not within military zones. Not all directions of the route were surrounded by military zones, but it at least pierced through 3 military fortresses. This is essentially a trace of the railway being designed for military purposes. And as it gets closer to the capital, the vigilance naturally becomes stricter. So the most vulnerable place is Igorbachi Station. Oh. Yes, I see. What is Princess Esida's scheduled departure time? 2 days later, at midnight, the train. Well, then we'll arrive around 10 in the morning 3 days from now. It would be just right if we leave now. I've unfolded the route map and nodded. His junior, who had been staring at his face for a moment, chuckled and said, seriously, what's going on? I don't think it's a mission entrusted to us, and I've never heard of you predicting anything, even back when you were active. I can send agents for counter-terrorism, but I need evidence to convince the higher-ups. Shall we make a bet then? A bet? Without on-site support. Just see the results. Ivan smirked and turned to look at his junior. There was no evidence. There might not even be an informant. But terrorism would happen. It's common sense. There was no time or room for persuasion on this issue. There would be more instances of this common sense in the future. And how would he convince each time? So, Ivan decided to cut it off from the first button. On top of that, he had confidence in himself. If terrorism didn't happen, there would be little burden since he hadn't requested support in the first place. If terrorism did happen, his words would now gain serious credibility. He had rescued the daughter of the hiking leader. Moreover, hiking Inar wouldn't have sent his most cherished daughter alone. Naturally, an agent would be accompanying her. But if terrorism is constant, it means they are confident in facing all of Asedis's agents. It was a risky move, but there was much to gain. Even Ivan had the opportunity to verify whether his academy official was accurate. If he failed some of these tests, well, it might not be an academy thing. You seem really confident. Well, okay, I'll keep my hands off for now. Ivan didn't bother to reply. Not believing was the obvious thing to do. Normally, Sane anti-government groups don't cause terrorism on civilian transportation railways. Train terrorism consumes a multitude of human resources. From the moment the incident occurs, those involved lose all the carefully built-up goodwill over years to decades. Losing overwhelmingly outweighs gaining from simply blowing up a civilian railway. Even if it's the assassination of Inaya the Great's precious daughter, it's the same. Unlike assassinating while staying in the country, what happens on the train has somewhat unclear responsibility. In other words, it may cool diplomatic relations, but it's unlikely to escalate beyond the level of a dispute. Blowing up a civilian railway just for such a goal is nothing more than a disgrace. Therefore, the Kraslov royal family doesn't invest more than the minimum security in it. That's the common sense of the people of this world. Rational reasoning and judgment. But Ivan's common sense was different. This was an official matter. In this peaceful 4 years, where ominous events like terrorism and conflicts disappeared with the Demon King, it wasn't strange that Ivan was the only one who could anticipate something like train terrorism. Even if a princess from abroad were to arrive, the extent of preparation and ceremony would be confined to the capital's history. I have to do this 3 more times. Ivan sighed deeply as he descended to the train platform. The party of warriors departing from a foreign land, excluding the saint, numbered 4. Even in this tiresome world, Ivan boarded the train, pressing his temples. As Ivan departed on the train towards the border, his junior headed to the palace to report dutifully. Your Highness, Sir Dmitry Chikatov has entered the palace. He is the palace minister in the palace. Yes, Your Excellency. Carved wood, gilded inner walls, a lavish private office, a workspace outrageously spacious for a single person. In Princess Elizaveta Kirillovna Kraslov's office, adorned with marble and ivory, stood a massive ebony table. Behind the cluttered table, a woman casually toyed with a pen. Report. Petrovich left. Tell me something I don't know. He suspects a train terror attack. The time and place are quite clear. Upon hearing this, Elizaveta halted the pen. Does Vanka have an informant? No, there hasn't been any indication in the past 4 years. An information network ultimately relies on human resources. And all human resources require steady management and proper lubrication as essential components. Given that handling the task of pinpointing a shadowy anti-government organization without any support or management was impossible, even if it meant relying solely on guesswork. Yet, despite his actions being nothing more than conjecture, there was a certain type of confidence emanating from him. Just like 4 years ago when he left on his last mission, claiming an act of terror was common sense without any evidence. If someone other than Ivan made such a claim, Elizaveta would have easily labeled them as mad. This information might be proven wrong, but at least Petrovich is still active. Your Excellency, the legend is still very much alive. The reliability of information is a secondary concern. Since Ivan left on his own without requesting support, even if the information was wrong, there would be no loss. Dmitri trembled slightly as he recalled something more important than the current situation. It was the first time he had gone to meet Ivan. The ability to naturally silence footsteps unconsciously is a basic skill for the eradication unit. However, after accurately determining the unseen opponent's position and height behind the closed door, the posture of revealing one's presence, leaning and preparing for a counterattack by exposing one's movements while crouching was a training state not easily found even in active duty agents. The thick premonition and the dry vitality felt the moment the doorknob turned. Instinctively raising his voice to inform Ivan of his location felt like second nature, because if he had kept quiet, an axe blade might have flown in the next moment. Who? Hugh. A small laughter echoed from beyond the table. In Dmitri's memory, it was a pleasant laughter heard after 3 years. Your Excellency, attach people. Record every move of Bantka in detail, even the smallest actions. Make it an urgent report, available for inspection at any time. If Your Excellency wishes to see it, wouldn't it be better for you to inspect it personally? If that were the case, I wouldn't have just been reporting for 4 years. Elizabeth chuckled and moved the quill again. Meeting at a better moment, at a more perfect timing, is the right thing to do. Oh, yes. Stop making empty words and go protect the country. Understand? Yes, Your Excellency. Dmitry Chikatov will retire with honor. Dmitry stepped back with a solemn expression and left. No, receiving reports on every detail of daily activities is neither straightforward nor romantic. At least, He hoped his lover wouldn't think that way. Dmitri hurriedly left the Eastern Palace. When the agents dispatched by Dmitri arrived at Igor Beach Station, they received 3 neatly packaged body bags. At the meticulously cleaned crime scene, there was no sign of Ivan Petrovich. At that moment, Ivan was running through the forest, wielding an axe. Chapter 5, 5-3. A terrorist incident is bound to happen on the Academy admission train. 3. Igor Beach Station is a small and quiet rural stop. It is located in a modest village that serves no more than the role of a border checkpoint for Kraslov-Droan. Therefore, the passengers disembarking at this station are limited. Village residents or logistics distributors. That's all there is to it. So amateurish. The 3 men in a corner of history are clearly suspicious. First, a man in the corner of the waiting room, glancing at the newspaper while checking the time. This man doesn't seem to be checking the train schedule, though. He has already sent 3 trains. Next, a man with clenched fists nodding off. He, too, appears to be spending time casually, but not really. Every time he heads to the restroom or towards the newspaper stand, he subtly opens his eyes and observes. Finally, a man selling dried vegetables in the corner of the waiting room. It's almost laughable at this point. He hasn't sold vegetables to anyone in the waiting room, and he would buy vegetables in a deserted rural station waiting room in the first place. Crucially, Ivan, a tenant farmer, could tell the condition of those vegetables. They weren't dried for long-term preservation but rather neglected for so long that they had withered and twisted. Ivan moved his hand under the newspaper, gripping the gun. Looking at the clock, it was 9 o'clock. The train carrying Princess Esidas would arrive soon. Well, it's worth checking. He slowly stood up, folded the newspaper, and headed for the trash can. In the process, he precisely pressed the muzzle under the dozing man's neck. Quiet. The man, shocked, tried to put his right hand into his chest but froze at the chilling touch of the gun barrel. Good. 1 gun in the left breast. From NobleMTL.com. From the almost immediate response, it seemed there were traces of training. What are you doing? Stop! The other 2 men in the waiting room simultaneously shouted, standing up. It's amusing. Since Ivan's aimed gun was hidden by the newspaper, from the outside, it would look like he had merely placed his hand on the man's neck. In other words, these 3 are in the palm of his hand. But lastly, just to be sure, he needs to check. Even though he said he didn't need support, Elizabeth may have sent an agent. Where does your loyalty lie? What? If this person is an agent of Elizabeth and loyal to the Kraslov royal family, there would be no doubt in this statement. This was one of the first questions not only from the extermination unit but also from national intelligence officers. It's the equivalent of frontline troops saying, "Stop, I'll shoot if you move." You must answer the first and perhaps the final question, even if you have to lie. So, this guy is a mercenary who moves for money. Bang! A bullet flew from the muzzle, cleanly severing the man's cervical vertebrae. The man caught by Ivan didn't even react, grumbling instantly. Good Lord! Shoot! Shoot that bastard! The vegetable vendor and the man reading the newspaper hastily got up, drawing pistols from their holsters. This signifies several things. Firstly, they are all in cahoots. Secondly, they are amateurish. Thirdly, they do not belong to the Kraslov monarchy. And lastly, they've never faced a real powerhouse. Bang! Tang! Reflexively fired bullets brushed past Ivan's shoulder and head. Seems like a mercenary who's good at aiming but incredibly cheap for not knowing angle detection. As they readjusted their positions to shoot again, Ivan was already swinging an axe towards the vegetable vendor and aiming the gun at the man reading the newspaper. Swish! Bang! Scream! A man, both wrists severed in a single blow, screamed horrifically as he collapsed, while another, with a bullet accurately lodged in his forehead, couldn't even scream. Wiping the blood off the axe blade on the fallen vegetable vendor's coat, Ivan approached. "Are you all there is?" "GG gone. Where did this monster come from?" "Monster." For a moment, Ivan wondered if he misheard. A monster? For just this much? To think those who intended to oppose the Berserker Aina would call him a monster seemed utterly absurd. If Aina had come himself, there wouldn't have been any confrontation. He would have raised the entire lobby in one go. This wasn't supposed to happen. The bleeding is severe. Without proper hemostasis when the radial and ulnar arteries in the wrist are severed, a guaranteed death within 5 minutes is certain. And now, with both hands severed, the situation is even worse. The vegetable vendor trembled, her face already pale with fear. Ivan sighed and searched the guy's pockets. With no hands, he had to do it himself. Pieces of tissue, a few East Side coins in a worn-out pocket, no identification, and a small instrument with a strange button. The sensed magic was faint, probably a signaling device. If we don't stop the bleeding, he'll die in 3 minutes. Where are the others? They are by the tracks. How many? 15. You can't do anything alone. I'll help. Save me. They're all armed, and our leader, the captain, is there, a real monster. If you save me, I'll divert their attention. The vegetable vendor shouted desperately, trembling. Of course, she wanted to live. Anyone witnessing blood flowing in real time would lose their composure. Ivan nodded. The vegetable vendor's complexion noticeably brightened. It was left for signaling the captain when other variables arise. You guys are reconnaissance, right? Why yes. I'm useful, very useful. This guy was unaware of the existence of angle detection. So, their leader would be of a similar level. Did you hear who's on the train? It's the gold transport train. Drona is sending a trade goods train to Kraslov. That's what they said. Understood. You're saving me, right? I answered all your questions. I didn't lie. No, there were lies mixed in. No, not really. Ivan coldly stared at the man. Useful enough. What? These guys were nothing more than common thieves motivated by money. Torturing them wouldn't yield any useful information. If anything, it was the captain. At least, he could discern some connections. Thunk. Ivan rose, wielding the axe to strike the man's head. Thunk. With a sound, the man's body slumped. He pressed the button on the communicator, tracing the direction where the magical line surged. Not far. Ivan wiped the axe blade on the man's coat and sheathed it at his waist. The time was 9:03. If the train operated according to schedule, it would arrive at this station by 10 o'clock. Within 50 minutes, a train terror incident would occur. So, quite leisurely, Ivan chuckled as he tidied up the corpses. It took about 5 minutes to erase the bloodstains and traces of battle. Tracing removal was one of the most crucial aspects of the extinction unit's training. There was a reason for Ivan's leisurely demeanor. According to the Academy's official stance, a train terror incident could never harm the protagonist and main characters. When the train was attacked, the protagonist would escape unharmed with someone's assistance and arrive at the academy safely. Ivan had never intended to thwart the train terror in the first place. This is a tutorial. Ivan was running through the forest, occasionally pressing the button to check the magic lines of the communicator when they dimmed. Tutorials are steps that help players adapt to the game. So, he hired such sloppy rogues to attack the children of the hero party, perhaps to familiarize himself with combat from the low-level stages. At first, Ivan pondered who the protagonist among the hero party's children might be. He soon deduced the answer. Everyone. Everyone was the protagonist. Every member of these hero party children was a protagonist. Let's say a player creates their character when playing the game. In that case, they are given archetype characters, those with unique storylines in the world, and crucially, characters with entirely different traits or occupations. Isabel, the daughter of a hero. Dual class, magician and warrior. Oscar, the son of a knight. Elvira, the daughter of a magician. Esides, the daughter of a light warrior. Presumably, dual class, minstrel and light warrior. Lucia, the apprentice of a rogue or assassin. If the player chooses one of them when creating a character in the game, they must resolve the train terror as part of their tutorial. Therefore, Ivan redirected his thoughts in a different direction. If all the tutorials for each character have the commonality of the train terror, I can anticipate the terrorist group in advance. If you commit the same act 6 times, let alone once or twice, you will surely be caught. Ivan dashed through the bushes and pressed the receiver again with a click. This time, he felt the surge of magic nearby. I'll leave the tutorial to the protagonist. I'll eliminate the variables. There's no stopping the train terror. After all, the train terror happening is a constant. Preventing it beforehand might just make things explode in a different way. Then, perhaps it's better to identify the group that caused the train terror, and later, at the academy, hunt down and eliminate any trace of that group. Avoiding direct confrontation, conducting espionage from behind, and annihilating the threats. That's the modus operandi of the Annihilation Unit. Chapter 6, 6-3. There will always be a terror attack on the Academy entrance train. 4. Commander Hugo had been silently watching the signal device flashing brightly from earlier. Is this thing broken? It was an expensive magic signal device they'd prepared in case of trouble at the Igorvich station, meant for escape. Right now, it was blinking regularly, roughly once every minute. The distress signal was to press it 3 times in a row. It wouldn't send such a signal by accident, but the signal blinked consistently just once. It seemed to be malfunctioning. Hey, this was really expensive. Oh, Commander, don't worry. It's money that can be reimbursed anyway. The guys? They're in position and have already planted the explosives. Once the train arrives, they'll detonate it, raid the cargo, and be done in a jiffy. Even with some buffer, it'll be over in 15 minutes. Good. Oh, here comes the train. Everyone, get ready. Yes. In the distance, the train billowed steam as it rushed forward. About 30 minutes away from the Igorvich station. A walk of about an hour from here. Even if the train derails, there's at least a 2-hour buffer until the support forces arrive. Blasted. Hugo turned and shouted. Quang. The explosives planted on the tracks detonated, shaking the ground. Clanging noises accompanied the train screeching to a halt and slowly tilting off the tracks from the outside. Go. Sweep them all. Wow, we're rich now. I heard that the cargo compartment of that train is loaded with gold bars. If we roughly melt them down, erase the royal stamps, and distribute them in the black market, how much could we make? Hugo chuckled as he pocketed the broken signal lamp, the last thing he saw before it flickered out, thinking about how to interrogate the young wizard selling these goods. From noblemtl.com. Kiek Quaduke. The train derailed, twisting and crashing. Ivan climbed onto a tree, looked down from a distance, and turned his gaze. One guy looked like a commander, and another seemed like a lieutenant. Around 3 others. About 10 people heading towards the train. If there were around 15 people, the estimate seems about right. Ivan jumped off the tree, grabbed his gun, and landed straight on the ground. Dang! Exclamation mark! Exclamation mark! Along with the distant roaring sound, the thieves all either fell down or hid behind trees, including one guy hit in the head by a bullet. None of the 5 sensed line of sight detection. To those who reached a certain level, projectile weapons don't work. That's why there are no archers in the hero party. The moment a firearm is discharged, the aura entwined with the bullets is detected by the strong, preventing them from hitting. Infusing magic into a weapon to eliminate such a thing is fundamental. However, once projectiles like bullets or arrows leave the hand, such manipulation is impossible. Therefore, the strong never take cover. Instead, they move their bodies towards the direction of the gunshot sound during that time to deal with their opponents. Startling at the gunshot is exclusive to the weak. Hence, the extermination unit carries guns. Not only can they gauge the opponent's strength, but it's also a superior weapon for dealing with the weak in small skirmishes. Who the hell is over there? The guy shouting loudly is the commander. He must be kept alive. There's value in extracting information from him. Therefore, there's no need to spare the remaining guys. Ivan stepped forward toward the guys from behind the tree. Shoot, shoot, tatada. The battle lines were intricately entwined. In the midst of it, Ivan leisurely loaded his ammunition while strolling through the chaos. Click. The sound of bullets hitting the floor echoed through the room as soon as the sound of ammunition being loaded in the chamber was confirmed. Bang. 1. Again. Click. The sound of bullets bouncing off the magazine. Bang. 1. Once more. Click. Bang. Click. Dang. With each shot fired, one enemy line vanished. Even if the drained agents hadn't mastered line detection, they never exposed themselves while shooting. However, as soon as Ivan realized that these guys hadn't even undergone such training, he sprang into action, firing bullets indiscriminately. The result was this: the difference in training, experience, and talent. 4 corpses with bullets embedded in their foreheads and a large man trembling violently. You. The man grimaced, dropped his gun, and drew a knife. Not a bad choice. If the bullets don't hit, the gun becomes useless. Who sent you? Where did you get these? Damn. Bang. Thud. As soon as he pulled out the knife, Ivan shot the blade out of his hand. Shocked, the man dropped the handle, clutching his wrist and staggered backward. Feeling the overwhelming gap in skill, he turned pale and began to tremble uncontrollably. Do you have a good memory for faces? Huh. Why yes. I remember you clearly. Just watch. Good to hear. You'll need to remember well from now on. Ivan didn't even bother expecting to find the ones behind the train terror from this guy. An organization capable of such actions wouldn't have left such an easy trail. Therefore, he started with the impression. Anything, no matter how trivial, that could serve as a clue. Gait, posture, the clothes he wore at that moment, and just in case, any noticeable tattoos or accessories. Even in your tone and intonation. If something comes to mind, answer. Ivan spoke softly, raising the axe. There's no intention to kill. This guy is probably the tutorial boss, and that's the protagonist's job. But causing harm is acceptable. Ivan knew countless ways to inflict injury without damaging the function of a person. 9:35 a.m. It had been 10 minutes since the train terror began. Train terrorist thwarted successfully. Ouch! Ecdysis clutched her forehead and groaned. She couldn't gather her thoughts. With her father's attendants having overturned the entire first-class cabin, there was no one to ask what had happened. She shook her head vigorously and staggered to her feet. She was standing by the window now. The chair she had been dozing off in a moment ago was sprawled elongatedly next to her. This is a train. Train seats cannot lie sideways. Therefore, she just realized with difficulty that the train had flipped. It hurts. Hello? Is anyone there? She whimpered and looked around. She could hear the rushing and bustling sounds, but the screams of people terrified by the train accident were not audible. So, this is bandits. Ecdysis gasped, covering her mouth. Bandits attacking trains were heard of occasionally, but it wasn't a common occurrence. What could one gain from robbing such a train in the first place? No, wait. I'm here, Ecdysis said, surprised, covering her mouth. In most situations, this would be just a bluff, but surprisingly, in this case, Ecdysis was telling the truth. What should I do? What should I do? No agents around because she had shouted not to follow her, and now she regretted it. Ecdysis felt her hair turning white as she hastily embraced her instrument bag. Fortunately, the violin was intact even in this overturned train situation. Thank goodness. What if you were damaged? She gently opened the bag and carefully stroked the violin with a soft gesture, and soon, he tightly gripped the neck of the violin and held it upside down as if it were a pipe. No, like an axe. There's a saying among musicians that instruments are like their lives. From this, it can be understood that Ecdysis was prepared to fight, wielding his own life, risking his life as the strongest music student in history. He now enters the train terror situation resolution. Before the unification of the Drowan kingdom by King Anna, and before the Demon King awakened, threatening all of humanity. Until then, the Drowan kingdom had passed through an era of chaos with tribal leaders called Ya proliferating throughout the country. Among the mad slaughter groups that created blood-soaked fields with axes, knives, and tongues, mostly used for polite greetings to the opponent's parents, there was a peculiar class, the Ya's Ghost Huskle. The Huskle class is often equated with the Knight class of other countries, but in detail, it is different. Unlike knights who establish a dual contractual relationship with lords and ghosts, Huskle only considers loyalty and ability as conditions. Knights receive wages and land as compensation, but Huskle receives only loyalty. They neither receive nor ask for rewards, except for small spoils and provisions. Regardless of blood ties, they are considered brothers and share the same meal and use the same bed in the same house. It does not necessarily mean sharing the bed at night, and there were many such brothers even for King Anna. A middle-aged man was gasping at the edge of the forest. The man glared at the overturned train in the distance with naked eyes. Those damn bastards took my nephew. His nephew, who wouldn't hurt even if you put dirt in your eyes, is riding over there. The man screamed furiously and started retching again. If someone follows me, I'll really lose my mind. When Ecdysis said that to Anna, Anna, as a great warrior of Drowan, could figure out the answer to this riddle. I just need to not stand out. Since trustworthy individuals considered Ecdysis their nephew and cherished him, even if he disguised himself, he would still stand out on the same train. However, sending him on the next train is worrisome, as going alone across the border on a train is a risky situation. Once again, King Anna brilliantly solved the riddle as a great warrior of Drowan. I just need to follow the train. Therefore, King Anna solemnly gathered his siblings and inquired, who will be the one to protect RSC? Bro there, please send me. Who is the true warrior who can follow the train with two legs? I am here, sir." The great Huskars of Drun raised their hands in unison, shouting with enthusiasm. In their 40s, muscular and robust, they opened their mouths like hungry chicks, making loud sounds. King Anna, observing this peculiar scene with satisfaction, inquired solemnly, "Then, let only those who can enter the Janzak University raise their hands." Janzak University has a tough entrance exam. The Huskals, even if confident in practical or interview skills, reluctantly lowered their hands at the thought of the written test. They didn't feel ashamed. After all, knowledge was not considered a virtue of warriors. Amidst this, one man kept his hand raised. "From now on, you are a freshman in the physical education department." "Yes, sir. I will protect Tessie with my life." "Good. Go, my brothers." "Yes, sir." That was 2 months ago. The man who had secretly infiltrated the Graciolov without others knowing, astonishingly passed the entrance exam with confidence and was admitted to the physical education department. It means he barely passed with the minimum grade and set a new record in the practical evaluation. Sadly, Janzak University had no age limit for admission. And now, one day in January, a man who had been running alongside the train without rest or sleep for 2 days staggered to a stop. The man, who confirmed the train derailment with his naked eyes 2 kilometers away, began to rush, uprooting all the trees in a straight line. To save the strongest physical education student of the era, the current strongest music student rushes to the scene of the train terror incident. From NobleMTL.com. Chapter 7, 7-3. There must be a terror incident on the Academy admission train. 5. Uck. Huff. Cough. "It's okay. You won't die. Just kill me." "Don't say such things," Ivan whispered affectionately while pouring potions onto Hugo's body. Every time the viscous cold liquid touched his body, Hugo trembled, and small screams escaped. Ivan could accurately discern the heart of this man. One of the things most despised by the soldiers rolling at the forefront was the healing potion. It held a position just below Rice, superiors, commanders, and enemies in terms of dislike, indicating its status. In fact, he had the experience of forcibly administering a healing potion when his forearm was about to be severed. "Just cut off the arm." "Ugh, don't say such things, Comrade Petrovich." "The body of a comrade is the treasure of the motherland." "Who treats a treasure like this?" It was an experience from his immature childhood. After that dreadful experience, Ivan made every effort to avoid major wounds. The healing potion, known as Albo Chill, induced pain at the level of a severe drug, reminiscent of the memories of Kim Sun-woo's time. Thanks to this cursed concoction, Ivan discovered a new value for the healing potion during his service in the eradication unit. The healing potion inflicted pain akin to sprinkling salt on a burn, but wounds were invariably healed. So, even in the process of treating wounds that occurred during interrogation, one could continue the interrogation. It was truly sustainable interrogation. At that time, Ivan's fellow agents in the eradication unit were astonished by his idea. However, in this world, sadly, there was no Geneva Convention for prisoners. No more. I don't know anything. Really? So please stop. You're more useless than I thought. Let me live. No, let me die. No, you must live. Because it's a tutorial, boss. Drip. Ivan poured the potion again, closing the man's mouth, and stood up. The criminal organization that orchestrated the train terror wore thick coats, was an adult male, and had a face with a recognition-inhibiting spell. It was now January. Naturally, adult males wore thick coats during this season. His nationality couldn't be discerned from his speech or accent. Ivan hadn't expected that this guy, who couldn't distinguish such things, was a country bumpkin. He hit the mark. Ivan surveyed the surroundings, tongue clicking. The train was still quiet. That wasn't a bad thing. Princess Esades is still fighting. If Princess Esades had lost, thieves would have rushed out of the train. Instead of finding gold, they would have obtained valuable nobles. The fact that no one had come out of the train so far actually proved Esades's safety. Thinking so, as Ivan rose to head towards the train. In that moment, a proximity alert sent a fierce warning to his forehead. No. Towards the entire face. Whoosh, accompanied by the sound of tearing wind. Quang. Chunks of rubble flew through the air like a typhoon, sweeping past the spot where Ivan had just been standing. Ivan quickly dodged, bouncing his body to evade the successive trajectories. Thud, thud, thud. The chunks of rubble followed him precisely, embedding themselves into the ground. Come out. Judging by the force displayed, the opponent was stronger than anticipated. If that was the case, the opponent must be aware of trajectory sensing as well. Since it was clear that they had to go through a pitched battle, both sides would have to reveal their bodies. He's a true monster, this captain. Did they dismiss too lightly the words of a novice who couldn't use trajectory sensing? If this guy wasn't the captain, then they wasted a precious potion. Ivan glared coolly at the man approaching from a distance. He's quite capable. A middle-aged man with a solid, muscle-packed physique approached with a snarl. A terrifying aura engulfed him, making the air shiver. But daring to lay a hand on my nephew? Foolish compared to your skill. Nephew? Was this guy a relative? This was getting troublesome. Ivan licked his lips, holstered his pistol, and gripped an axe in each hand. I hope you know something. Nonsense. Come, let's end this. The man sharpened his teeth, brandishing the axe. In the next moment, the two men clashed. Whoosh, thud. Essie bit her lip, hearing the sound of the violin soundboard twisting. Hold on a little longer, Kyang Kyang. The violin wasn't made for striking. Most instruments weren't, like most instruments, except for an exception like the electric guitar, which thrived on stage performances. Thus, this delicate and fragile wooden string instrument gradually broke as Essie swung her arm and the front plate twisted and the soundboard deformed, slowly shattering. However, Kyang Kyang, the violin, second generation, never wasted memories, friendship, or bonds with Essie. Whenever Kyang Kyang was swung, more things broke. Mostly the skulls of adult males. Damn it, that crazy woman. What the hell is she doing? Where's the gold? Hey, what happened to the cargo hold? There's nothing. We've been tricked. The thieves wanted to escape. With no gold, having blown up the train, it was obvious the military would be hot on their trail. And right in front of them, the insane woman was destroying people with her violin, ensuring chaos. Estes also wanted to escape. The fragility of Kang Kang's life felt vivid every moment. Fighting was frightening, and they didn't even know where they were. Thud. Wooden thwack. When Kang Kang finally lost his life, taking another thief's teeth with him, Estes clenched a piece of the violin's fingerboard left in his hand, sinking into a dismal mood. Kang Kang, you were a splendid musician. Damn it, isn't it time to run? This is not the time to fight. Damn it, are we going to bet our lives on going after her? Where the hell is our big brother doing anything? Unaware that the big brother was now oblivious to the fact that a fight was erupting between a muscle freak and a special forces officer, the thieves retreated with a rumbling hesitation. That was a mistake. Aona's daughter, in many ways, resembled her mother, but at least anger, fighting spirit, and combat skills were unmistakably inherited from her father. She couldn't let the death of her longtime comrade, Kang Kang, 2 years, an instrument, be in vain. With a gentle gesture, she stroked Kang Kang's remains and slowly straightened her back. Kang Kang, I won't forget your sacrifice. I've always been grateful and sorry. I'll stop that crazy woman. You geese run away. Big brother, hurry. You have to survive too. The remnants of the thieves left in the wake of the robbery turned their backs and began to flee. With tears in their eyes, they headed towards the headquarters where the big brother was. As everyone left, the thieves turned to Estes with determined faces. Please understand, miss. Huh? We had no idea you were on this train. But if you spare us, we're willing to go to court and testify. Isn't Kraslov a country of justice? Spare us. The thief threw away his weapon, kneeled, and shouted. It was a wise move. The escaped thieves, at this very moment, were sweating profusely between the enraged Huskil and the furious extermination unit officer. Bringing in a few more thugs won't change anything. There are quite a few survivors, but nothing will change. The two men, engaged in a struggle, shouted simultaneously as they saw thieves leaping out of the train, axes clashing against each other's bodies. Estes, what happened to the woman on that train? The young blonde. Is she unharmed? My niece. Is my niece unharmed? Ivan hesitated for a moment at the man's outcry. Wasn't that his niece? Ivan glanced at the man who had been knocked unconscious by shrapnel during the battle and groaned. It seemed too challenging. The man in front of him was like a meticulously designed boss in the early tutorial, playing the role of a barrier preventing progress. It felt as if he was serving as a threshold to prevent easy advancement, much like in a Souls-like game, but the patterns were too diverse. It was an opponent that beginners couldn't possibly defeat. In that case, The Academy train heist can never kill the protagonist. Allies appear to provide assistance. Was this man an ally? And perhaps the tutorial boss battle was designed to familiarize newcomers with one-on-one combat by defeating some scattered thugs and a clumsy boss after escaping from the train. Ivan sighed as he sharpened his axe. It was too damaged with teeth all over. Probably beyond salvage. Since most weapons were consumables, it didn't matter much. But it was still regrettable. Wait a moment. Weren't you guys on the same side? Why would you have such a misunderstanding? The man, putting away his weapon along with Ivan, squinted his eyes. You were giving healing potions to that bastard. Well, describing it as the interrogation method of the extermination squad was an exaggeration. There was no way to persuade them. Ivan shrugged his shoulders. I had something to find out. Ah. You should have said that first. He didn't give him time to explain. As Ivan looked at the man with a troubled face, the man laughed heartily, watching a lively woman jumping out of the train. Knees. Eshi, you're safe, uncle. Ivan ignored the sprinting figure, sneering at the terrified thieves in the aftermath, as if a bomb had just exploded, and chuckled at the destruction around him. The target was unharmed, and the accomplice had enough skill to keep the target safe until they reached Yansk University. And he himself should remain inconspicuous to the target. Being exposed would put him in a difficult position, and Esidis was well aware of that. It had been 7 years since that distant past, and at that time, Esidis was just a kid who had recently turned 20. Regardless, she might still remember Ivan. All the information that could be obtained here was secured. Ivan turned around and withdrew. Irina's daughter, Esidis, arrival in Kraslov. Drowan dispatched Agent Huskale, estimated, on a solo mission. Target's safety secured. Sending an encrypted short message urgently to the Eastern Palace, Ivan boarded the capital-bound train. From NobleMTL.com. It had been a tiring day for the income it brought. Essie, do you happen to remember a guy named Ivan? Mr. Ivan? Yes, of course. Esidis, who had brightened up at the familiar name, soon lowered her head gloomily. He was a really good person. Kind, impressive. I don't know about that, but anyway. The man furrowed his brow and then moved on. Under the hastily constructed makeshift cover made from tearing off the train door, 6 or so thieves carried the palanquin, terror evident on their faces. The man murmured quietly to Esidis atop the palanquin, careful not to be heard. I heard he died 2 years ago. The combat style seemed strangely familiar. Having clashed with the special forces of Kraslov and come out victorious. Using an axe felt oddly natural, similar to Irina's brotherly strikes. If the rumors were true that he learned axe skills from Irina, there was only one guy who fit the bill. Reserve Ivan Petrovich. More precisely, Hero Reserve Ivan Petrovich. One of the guys considered for deployment when there was a vacancy in the Hero Party. He was undoubtedly reported to have slain a dragon during the extermination battle after the Demon King's demise. Due to his thick beard, the shadowy forest, and the eyes consumed by rage, there was no chance to accurately observe the opponent's appearance. Well, he seemed like a guy from the Royal Information Organization, so if he continued activities in the capital, they would surely meet at some point. At that time, it was even an occasion to order a shave. The man shrugged his shoulders and took a step. A week's journey on foot to the capital. The crossing of the train and the furnace by the 2 freshmen of Jansk University begins. Chapter 8. 8-4. These orphans need a director. 1. This is a story from the time when I served in the Extinction Unit. There were generals known as the Demon Army's 7 Dragon Commanders, each staking the fate of their respective races. They were, in fact, the heroes of their races. Until the appearance of the Hero Party, the Allied Kingdoms were easily overwhelmed. Since the demons, physically superior to humans, gathered by race, there was no way to resist their attempt to conquer the world. In other words, the war with the Demon Army was, in essence, a war between humans and all other races. The strategists of the Allied Kingdoms, who were cornered, came up with a plan to solve this crisis. To break the unity of the demons, we need a suppression operation, not a frontal assault. Throwing the soldiers of the Allied Kingdoms to somehow hold and delay the front line. In the meantime, send an assassin to assassinate the 7 Dragon Commanders and dismantle the enemy's unity. Since the demons were merely a coalition of tribal states under the strongman system, if we could take down the 7 Dragon Commanders, the subordinate generals would each vie for the vacant commander's position and internal strife would begin. It was a valid point. So, In a grand sense, the hero party was nothing more than an assassination squad, thrown into battle but always coming back alive. Hence, a kind that the kings of all kingdoms couldn't easily touch. That's why Ivan disliked the hero party. It was similar to the reason why the Krasilov royal family decided to disband the Extinction Unit. It was too sharp a sword to be carried even in times of peace. 4. These orphans need a director. Ivan, receiving intelligence on the enrollment schedule of the hero party's sons and daughters, was enjoying a pleasant leisure. The timeline he planned was perfect. First, Esides, whom he rescued a few days ago. Then Isabel, the daughter of hero Maximilian. Affiliated with the Tis Kingdom, she departs in the first week of February. And immediately after, Oscar, the son of Knight Gilver, also departing from the Tis Kingdom. There was no need to worry about these two. Tis and Krasilov had relatively good diplomatic relations even before the war, and being close by, they had enough time to prepare for a train attack. And reaching the daughter of the wizard Bill Green, Elfa Hahira, was not even planning to take the train in the first place. Bill Green's hometown is an island floating beyond the Black Sea, the Kalian archipelago. Riding a warship will be safer there than for any other fellow. Since Krasilov had no fixed route, it might pass through tiles, but those who came on a warship in the first place wouldn't bring an envoy. Lastly, Enrique's disciple, Lucia. This guy is affiliated with the kingdom of Krasilov. It means he's already arrived somewhere in this capital. Even with a brief check at the very end, there were no issues, and he didn't even feel a desire to meet quickly. In other words, if he casually lets slip the train terrorism of the two freshmen scheduled for February, the rest will be resolved at a level where he doesn't need to intervene personally. After all, the train terrorism itself is part of the tutorial process. Through Echidna, he has gained complete confidence. There was no reason for him to take action before enrollment. Therefore, I want to eat kimchi stew. He was now spending time jotting down his list of things to eat when returning to Earth again. The time spent in the office, with a cup of coffee and a warm bonfire, was an invaluable leisure time that he wouldn't exchange with anyone. Tteokbokki, not roast tteokbokki. It's not even the plentiful broth tteokbokki from delivery food franchise style. The tteokbokki he wanted was the homemade street-style hipster tteokbokki sold in front of the school. He remembered that the most popular place was the one that sprinkled curry powder. I want to go home. Are you going to abandon us again? Ivan's eyes, which were relaxed, suddenly sharpened. Kim Sun-woo's inner self was crushed by Ivan's ego, and Ivan alone turned around. A little child was clinging to the window. Since when have you been there? Since the headmaster started mumbling about what he wants to eat. This is the third floor. I'm famous for diligently attending classes. Is wall climbing part of our indoor curriculum? Ivan walked straight to the windows, opened it wide, lifted the giggling child from outside, and carefully put him down inside the room. I won. You know that, right? Don't compete with that. Next time, go through the corridor. It's dangerous here. I can only win if I do something like this. The Street Basilica Orphanage has a long-standing game approach without the orphanage director noticing. This was a game that was overwhelmingly popular among the children. Since Ivan, the mysterious man who could catch a flying ball from behind without even turning around, participated. Furthermore, no matter how stealthily one moved, it was impossible to hide around Ivan. This rugged and sharp man, contrary to appearances, was quite harmless, making him one of the best playmates for kids who judged people more by their actions than their looks. I'll make a cup of cocoa for you, so drink up and leave. Yes, sir. Ivan didn't resist this either. After all, the orphans would have to find a way to survive once they graduated from the orphanage. If he could deceive his own senses, he wouldn't starve no matter where he ended up. Ivan sent the cheerful little one away and regained his peaceful leisure time. Isabel had about 2 weeks left until she boarded the train. Until then, he was free. There were times when he thought like that, until one of the orphans was suddenly kidnapped. Hey, what organization are you from? No, gentlemen, I don't think you understand. If our director finds out about this, you're in real trouble. Wow. Look at this kid. Someone might think we're the ones who got caught. Krasilov's capital, Prychankaya, was one of the prominent cities on the continent. Naturally, every city had areas known as back alleys, and Prychankaya also had several slum areas. Even among the gangs and outlaws in the back alleys, there were those who stood out, the notorious groups classified as assassination organizations. If someone stabbed someone with a knife, they would naturally face the judgment of the law. The higher the status of the person they targeted, the stricter the law tended to be, but the rewards also skyrocketed. So, those in assassination organizations were the ones who believed that after putting their lives on the line and swinging a knife, as long as they got paid, it didn't matter if they disappeared into the gallows mist. There were no glamorous assassins like Leon who gracefully appeared in the darkness, swiftly eliminated their target, and vanished. So, who is your director anyway? Ivan Petrovich. Have you heard the name, right? What? Ha. Of course. These guys had heard the name Ivan. They had heard the surname Petrovich as well. Ivan was the most common name in Krashilov, and Petrovich was the most common surname, wasn't it? Even the name of the saintly king who had once ruled was Ivan. It was like laughing first when someone asked if your name was Kim Kielsu. The foot soldiers of Prichenkaya's Bakali assassination organization chuckled. At that moment, a low voice echoed through the darkness of the alley. Wait! When the organization members jumped in surprise, lowering their weapons and stepping back, they made way for someone walking along the path. Step by step, one person emerged from the darkness of the alley. Who is it? Ivan Petrovich, headmaster, sir. The man briefly scanned Ivan from top to bottom, then smiled broadly. So, the audacious retiree was busy organizing an assassination squad from behind the students of St. Basil's orphanage, who had mastered the art of stealthily approaching and startling Ivan as if it were a traditional game, might seem that way to someone else's eyes, especially to an expert among experts, the most adept in this field among humanity. To Enrique, the eyes of Shadowblade Enrique, it couldn't be otherwise. Retiring with rumors of death and neatly planning to start a new life. Well, dogs don't change their habits. How could a special forces unit fix such habits? Enrique chuckled and nodded. Ivan Petrovich, identified as the leader of the malicious organization that collected orphans for assassination training. Someone has been kidnapped. Yes, headmaster. It's Priscilla. Remember? Every time. Ivan had memorized the personal information of all 300 of his students, including graduates. Priscilla. No surname. 17 years old. War orphan. Unknown parents. She remembered being abandoned near a military base during the war. Although mischievous, she was fundamentally bold and talented. Despite nearing graduation age, Ivan wasn't overly worried. These days, she seemed to be looking for a job here and there. Who, where, when? I'm not sure of the details, but only Priscilla's coat came back. This is probably a threat, right? Most likely. Ivan carefully examined the coat handed over by the teacher. Marks on the sleeves, a heavily tousled collar. One button hung loose until it fell off. Without much information, Ivan swiftly inspected it, but suddenly, his hand stopped. A seemingly ordinary fingerprint was imprinted. A faint scar, subtly covered by the muddy fingerprint, would go unnoticed unless carefully observed. A scar shaped like a cross on the palm, a mark of the nasty operatives of the organization. Enrique. From NobleMTL.com. There couldn't be a foolish guy kidnapping orphans for money, so this is either a provocation or a warning, or a summons. Ivan felt the need to rearrange his schedule, pushing back the meeting he least wanted to attend. The Shadow Blade, Enrique. In other words, the Grand Master's summons. The Annihilation Squad was Enrique's creation. Chapter 9. 9-4. These orphans need a principal, too. In the center of the central garden of Friedjenka, there are memorials and statues personally commissioned by King Ivan. The statue of the departing warrior, the goddess of victory, and the nameless hero. After the Demon King's death and the conclusion of the war, one day, a statue in the central garden of Friedjenka vanished. The nameless hero. It was said that in place of that statue, there was a small plaque, commemorating them. Is my right, Enrique? Prince Alexander protested vehemently, calling it a disrespect to the royal family, but Princess Elizabeth acknowledged Enrique's rights and relinquished the recovery of the statue. Of course, the truth remains unknown. In a single night, in the heart of the capital, in the gardens near the palace, a legendary heist took place. A daring act of theft by a member of the party that killed the Demon King. There was no need for hostility towards Enrique. Elizabeth handled it best. neither conflicting with Enrique's feelings nor undermining the dignity of the royal family. Was there such wording? Ivan gazed at the nameless hero from a corner of the underground passage. It had taken him just 3 hours since he got the information about Enrique's dungeon being in the southern Friedenko underground. Even when your names are forgotten, your glory will remain immortal. For those absent in this place, for all who are absent in this place, Elizabeth Kirillovna Kraslov, Enrique Sergeyevich. Ivan respectfully removed his hat and briefly paid his respects over his heart. Upon hearing the story of the statue's erection, he hadn't even thought of approaching, feeling needlessly awkward. The day he happened upon the central garden was already after Enrique had removed this statue. By the time his silent prayer ended, a voice tinged with laughter echoed through the underground canal. Do not mourn those who left first. I stand in the same ranks as them. You still remember. Good. Welcome, little Ivan. With a creak, the base of the statue twisted. The sound of metal grinding reached his ears, and soon the stone wall split open, revealing a passage. It was a corridor adorned in luxurious style, completely different from the nauseating underground sewer where he had stood just moments ago. Walking through the opulent corridor painted with silk-covered walls, Ivan steadied his emotions. Like most members of the warrior party, Grandmaster Enrique was insane. Of course, at that moment, Enrique was also thinking of Ivan with the same thoughts. Like most members of the extermination unit, little Ivan was insane. Face to face after 7 years, isn't it? Well, how have you been, disciple? Fairly well. Ivan sat in the reception room, sipping his coffee slowly, rolling it around in his mouth for a moment. It was a kind of ritual. Like most rituals, it was a precaution against assassination. There's no poison. Ivan nodded lightly and sipped the coffee. Ah, you can't distinguish the taste of the chemical toxins these days. Ah. After spitting it out again into the cup and placing it on the table. Ah. Just kidding. Shall I bring a new one? It's fine. I didn't come here for tea. Well, you're as tough as ever. You young lad. Enrique sprawled on the luxurious sofa with a playful smile. Between the side slit of the silk dress, white legs peeked through. Of course, they couldn't capture Ivan's gaze to that extent. The monster in front of him was over 100 years old now. How many elixirs and blood rituals has he consumed? Ivan couldn't help but imagine the image of a Samoza staring at him, its tongue flickering. It had to be like that since this place was the nest of vampires. Elder Vampire, Shadow Blade, Fangs of Darkness. And the traitor Enrique, a century ago, the hero who betrayed the Elder Vampire that questioned her, sucking his blood and putting an end to the vampire rampage scattered throughout the Prichanka region. For the next century, this woman claimed the lives of many under the pretext of assassination contracts. If the Demon King hadn't intervened, wouldn't a warrior have dealt with this woman? Ivan carefully stroked the handle of the axe under the table, lost in thought. Well, you came faster than expected. Rather, that's more active and desirable, isn't it? Well, being active is not a compliment between us, is it? Right? Where is Priscilla? Ah, getting straight to the point. You've always been like that. Enrique chuckled and flicked his ashtray. The dress swayed gently, revealing a seductive figure. Of course, Ivan is not swayed by someone 70 years his junior. His range of interest is within a maximum of 10 years, up or down. How? Did I ask? Or didn't I ask? You didn't ask. Oh? How can you be so sure? If you didn't, you would have attacked me instead of inviting me, Ivan said coldly, glaring at her with icy eyes. Isn't revenge the most important principle you taught me? Is that annoying little brat included in your revenge category? I kept her. He remembered the day he took Priscilla. The child was an orphan despised even among the refugees gathered in front of the military camp. Losing parents at a young age is a terrible thing. You can only rely on yourself for protection. The child realized that and always acted boldly. There were already enough sad people in the world to help a sad and depressed child. To sympathize with someone, you need to have room in yourself. At that time, the Allied Kingdom did not have such luxury. Therefore, Ivan remembers Priscilla and some other children. Having decided to take them and retire, he established an orphanage. Those children are as good as his own. Naturally, if something happens to his child, revenge is necessary. Don't harbor too much resentment. It makes you look sloppy. Enrique grinned and put down his teacup. Without taking a sip, the still full cup of black tea gently rippled on the table. Didn't I teach you? Resentment is the prerogative of the weak. Painting your body in various colors, emphasizing revenge and self-defense, is the whim of the weak. The answer? She's alive, unbitten, well, washed up, dressed nicely, and fed delicious food. Now, it's your turn to answer. Enrique slowly placed his white fingers on the table, speaking. What are you dressing up for? What are you up to now in your orphanage? Enrique was sincere. Perhaps it was because he was an orphan himself, having adopted an orphan, that he had a lot of affection. It was pitiful. If this kid had come to him, he would have been willing to take him in as family, a cute disciple with enough thoughts to do so. 2 years had passed like that. And now, this orphan from the orphanage appeared, showing an astonishingly perfect skill in infiltration. Honestly, it felt like getting hit in the back of the head. It wasn't anything remarkable to complain about the leak of skills. It wasn't a one-on-one duel or something significant, so he could just teach him. However, what was the meaning of dispatching an agent, as if suggesting a business fight in the same region as the master? She felt wronged. After retiring, he had disappeared without even coming to her, pretending to be dead while erasing his identity. Despite being within reach if she just fell, he never even tried to invite her for a drink. But what's this? Protesting while sending agents to do business in our front yard? Isn't this a declaration of war? Honestly, even though this mischievous little brat was brought in without being killed and politely invited, showing an intention like, let's not do this, we have a lot of memories, right? Do we need to fight? And yet, this stone-like man says, touch me, and you'll die. It really hurts. What's with that beard, too? Seriously going insane. Why is he doing something that was trendy a century ago now? That can't be called a disguise, right? I didn't teach him that way. Even with countless thoughts passing through her mind, Enrique, still a legendary vampire who had lived for a century and a member of the Great Warrior Party, continued to look at Ivan with a cheeky smile. What are you up to? How far should I go with the story? Ivan couldn't catch the thread. The reason Elizaveta uses him is that he is an undercover agent. The past is completely washed clean, the name is ordinary, so there's no misunderstanding whenever he uses it. His appearance has changed a lot, according to his standards. On top of that, the former Lieutenant Ivan Petrovich has already been officially declared dead and buried in the National Cemetery. So, according to Elizaveta's intention, his identity and mission are confidential. Can I tell Enrique about this? But wait, weren't Enrique and Elizaveta somehow connected? Initially, Enrique established the extermination unit, and Elizaveta was its commander, right? The two of them smiled, suffering from a headache due to lack of information but not losing their calmness and caution as thoroughly trained agents. What the hell is this guy thinking? Seriously? What the hell is this crazy woman thinking? That's what they were thinking. Is this betrayal? How could she do this to me? Is this betrayal? Did this woman, by any chance, switch sides from Elizaveta to Alexander? The priests were diligently cultivating camaraderie with a single heart and mind today as well. It was a winter night in mid-January. Chapter 10. 10-4. These orphans need a director. 3. In the end, Ivan raised his hand first. It meant he was cautiously starting to reveal information. In any case, they had to save Priscilla, who was being held hostage. Of course, it wasn't just Priscilla's life. Ivan didn't have confidence in defeating Enrique. I heard that you're raising a disciple. Oh? Enrique smirked, tilting his head with a deep smile. Ivan momentarily gripped the axe handle tightly and then deliberately loosened his grip. That's the expression that monster makes when it's in a bad mood. Go on. He's planning to enroll at the Janusk University this time. And somebody was worried about it. Just in case he gets hurt, it could be a big loss for the country. Ivan's words conveyed the following. From noblemtl.com. Elizabeth is worried about your disciple. So, she told me to protect him. That's what I've been doing lately, you know. Elizabeth's personality. But if you don't understand this, do you think you'll be seen as siding with Alexander? On the other hand, Ivan's words sounded like this to Enrique. I've already identified your disciple's identity and location, as well as his personal details. I was paid a hefty sum. If he gets hurt anywhere, it'll be sad. So take good care of him. Dare he put a knife to the back of a sky-like great master? Who commissioned him? Alexander? Is that bastard finally trying to get rid of me? No, this guy too. If I had received a request to kill him, I would have refused or at least given him a heads up. But suddenly coming and threatening, and then using a disciple for extortion. And this is a disciple? What kind of monster did I raise? If the only disciple who survived the last war is these guys, then Enrique nodded with a smile on his face. Indeed, that's right. Yeah. Nothing special. Nothing special, you say? Yeah. Short and blunt responses exchanged in a chilly and tense atmosphere. However, Ivan felt somewhat relieved. Even if Enrique seemed to be in a bad mood, he seemed to understand the current situation well enough. Well then, the problem is resolved now. If he gave a warning like this, even if the tutorial proceeded, Enrique's disciple wouldn't be in great danger. Enrique would personally see to that. Luck is on my side. They met by chance in the wind of Priscilla's kidnapping, but they raised income more smoothly than expected. The tutorial for the protagonists now has only 3 left, and the one with the shortest time remaining is still 2 weeks away. Lucia, come in. Yes, master. With a bright voice, someone opened the living room door and entered. It was a late teenage girl with shiny chestnut hair. Enrique looked at Ivan with a seemingly testing gaze and smiled. Come on, say hello. She's your disciple. I've heard a lot about you, Petrovich Kyong. Master always said to follow only half of Petrovich's lead. No, don't praise him. This kid is a troublemaker. Enrique forced a smile while grinding his teeth. Human. Huh? Yes, of course. Do you know your master's species? Master is a human, Lucia said confidently, puffing out her chest. Master has to live with a somewhat unique diet, but he takes care of me and protects this country as a true hero. If you ask what defines a species, I would say humanity, Petrovich Kyong. Oh, Ivan couldn't help but marvel. Since the war with the demons, the Allied Kingdom had held an extremely hostile position toward both the heterogeneous races and the Ainu race. It was only natural. Most of the citizens wandering the streets had lost their immediate relatives to the demons. Elves were excluded. Despite being part of the Allied Kingdom, they were shunned due to their detestable nature. Amidst such circumstances, the open-mindedness that the criteria for race weren't inherent to the race itself was a mindset more akin to 21st century Earth than this tiresome otherworldly realm. And Enrique's expression upon hearing this fresh answer, considered quite progressive by this world's standards, relaxed into a pleased grin. There you have it. I've taught you everything. It might take some time to master, but learning is done. If there's another adventure party in the future, this lad here will be fitting for it. Certainly, being able to roam under the sun would make him even more suitable for an adventure party. And that phrase, I've taught everything but mastery takes time, also gave Ivan a certain assurance. Is he talking about a skill tree? In typical games, as characters level up, they tend to automatically acquire skills. It was clearly odd. Suddenly recalling something in your mind while adventuring or doing anything. But this game seemed to function in such a way, taught but lacking experience and refinement. Isn't that the most fitting expression? Ivan nodded in agreement. A proud disciple, someone better than me. No, than us. A precious one gained in my final years. So I don't want to kill you, Ivan. Suddenly, Ivan tensed, placing his hand back on the axe handle. With Enrique alone being a challenge and now facing a 2-on-1 situation including his apprentice, plus being captured as a prisoner, could Ivan guarantee victory within Enrique's dungeon? It was a tough situation. Ivan carefully eyed her hand. I'll ask you as a pledge of our memories. Withdraw your hand from this world. This is my territory. Enrique spoke with genuine sincerity. Running an assassination organization in this city is something one person can handle alone. Don't earn money through blood in the alleys of the city. Wasn't retirement chosen for that reason? Alexander is an unbelievable fellow. If you're going to dip your hands into politics, follow Elizabeth's path. With that sentiment, conveyed intensely. And then, so, it's come to this. Ivan gripped the axe handle and stood up firmly. Enrique eventually sided with Alexander. Facing off against the hero party member was clearly overtime work, but it was an inevitable duty. What did Alexander offer in return? People? Blood? Territory? What? If he's still hand in hand with the Kraslov royal family, I also hold our memories as collateral. Where does your loyalty lie, officer? After staring into Ivan's eyes for a while, Enrique, sweating coldly, spoke up. You were the one who joined hands with Alexander, right? What nonsense. I've never met that person with a smiling face. Neither have I. A moment of silence fell. So, Did he gather orphans and teach them assassination techniques? Our orphanage's internal curriculum complies with regular educational standards. Then what was he? He was skilled in ambush tactics. That was the effort of the students. They worked hard in various aspects to find employment after graduation. You didn't teach them? No. Silence fell again for a moment. So, was he just a 10-year-old orphan sneaking around? And did they just, what, kidnap him, call him out, threaten him? Wait a moment. So, what about my disciple? Why is his name suddenly coming out of your mouth? Elizabeth asked. With many hero party children enrolling this time, she requested protection in the midst of uncertainty. Haven't you heard? I haven't. That brat. Why would she ask you? I'm perfectly fine. Who are you treating like trash? Enrique exclaimed and then slumped onto the sofa. This is frustrating. Seriously. It's always like this when I talk to you. Why couldn't the gods give you some eloquence? That's all you lack. It's not like that. Where did this pre-modern nonsense come from? Directed at a graduate of 21st century essay education. An inner turmoil erupted within Kim Sun-woo, but it was subdued by Ivan, and calmness prevailed once more. Hey! Did you see that? This is how your execution will be. When people start tearing words apart and spitting them out, conversation just doesn't flow. True. Yeah. Lucia hesitated, seemingly bewildered by the sudden and overly charged atmosphere in the reception room that quickly dissipated. You seem to suit each other well. Not really. What are you talking about? Ahahaha. Lucia laughed and cautiously closed the door behind her as she exited. After a moment of silence, Enrique, holding a cup of tea, spoke. Shall I bring more tea? It's fine. Though it had cooled down, it still tasted good. Ivan, originally from a country where people consumed espresso with ice, paid no attention to the temperature of the coffee. The meeting with the parents of the prospective student for St. Jansk University was successfully concluded. Principal Sam. Priscilla burst out frighteningly as the door swung open, and she leapt into Ivan's arms. Ivan gently patted her shoulder with a careful gesture and pulled away. Don't look for work in deserted places from now on. Yes, it was really scary. It's okay now. Don't worry. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket, wiped Priscilla's cheek, and then shifted his steps from the reception room, through the underground passage, back to the surface. Exiting the alley and heading straight for the main street. After a while, their footsteps, which had been continuing without much conversation, suddenly stopped. Sir. Yeah, just in case. Priscilla tightly gripped her wand under the sparkling streetlight and spoke. Where? Should I get ready to leave? Probably. Once the preparations were complete, and the new semester at Jansk University officially began, he would inevitably have to leave the orphanage. With a new status as a gardener, he dedicated himself to protecting the children of the warrior party. About 3 years. For him, it was not such a long time. However, it was different for the orphans. From NobleMTL.com. Having lived their entire lives as war orphans, they couldn't afford to miss out on this haven they had just recently discovered. It was a family painstakingly constructed, a bed acquired with difficulty, and the home they had barely seized. For the orphans who had always been discarded, though it was only 2 years, this orphanage was their last stronghold, one they didn't want to be abandoned anymore. Priscilla spoke hesitantly with a voice mixed with tears. Please, don't leave. If you disappear, we, will be alone again. Ivan took her off his coat and draped it over Priscilla's shoulders. He fell silent for a moment. He had no memory of comforting a young child. He didn't even have a memory of soothing a young girl. Even digging into the distant memories of Kim Sun-woo, it was the same. Kim Sun-woo was a monster who spent more than half of his life writing 5,700-character malicious comments while reading webtoons and web novels all day. After that, there was nothing to say. Having dedicated more than half of his life to military service, Ivan couldn't easily recall how to speak to someone other than with an axe or bullets. Don't worry, I'll come by often. Where are you going? It should be okay to say this much. It's not sensitive information, and she's practically my child. Ivan answered, struggling with Priscilla's tears. St. Jan's University. Do you have to come back? I'm not leaving right away. And I'm not leaving for a lifetime. The effort and attachment put into the orphanage were immeasurable. The orphanage was like a home to him. The director's office was the only sanctuary in his heart. He made a firm resolution, patted Priscilla's shoulders a couple of times as she sobbed, and turned away. And, St. John's University. I heard the entrance exam is tough. Next year's entrance exam is in November. All the orphans from Basilisha Orphanage embarking on their exam life to enter St. John's University. Episode 4. These orphans need a director. Chapter 11. 11 to 5. The Morning Star. 1. When I think of the hero Maximilian, there's one memory that stands out vividly. It's the sky-splitting contest. It began like this. Maximilian, as foolish-faced as ever, energetically rose and wielded his sword. Whoosh, whoosh, swish, screech. Suddenly, as if he had some sort of epiphany, that rascal decisively cleaved the sky. Quite literally, the sky. With one stroke, clouds were cleaved and scattered. A tempestuous roar shook the earth. As I reminisced before, a party of heroes is fundamentally an assassination squad, waiting deep within enemy territory, biding time at the cost of the lives of soldiers who may still be falling on the front lines, aiming for the leader of the Demon King's army. Therefore, such a disruptive act was out of the question. Is he really out of his mind? Enrique grumbled, hurling a dagger toward the hero. The hero, wearing a sunny smile, effortlessly caught the dagger with his body. Naturally, the blade bounced off his bare skin. Just shouting around, aren't you? Saying the hope of the United Kingdoms is here. Quite the heroic act, huh? Vilgreen spoke coldly, swiftly completing a spell. He immediately assumed a defensive posture, sensing the approaching demons. Meanwhile, Gilver, this knightly nobleman, swung his sword with a thoroughly provocative expression. Skewer! Right back at you. The clouds the hero had sliced dispersed into fragments. Gilver laughed refreshingly and brushed his hair aside. Turns out I sliced more than expected. It was a good warm-up. Your wrist seems too loose and might just break. Sorry, Patricia. Can you apply a healing spell? I find that expression slightly offensive. Watching this spectacle for a while, Aina chuckled softly, rose, and raised his axe. Don't do it. I really hope you don't. Men of Dran always leave their mark on the world. What nonsense is this all of a sudden? Put the axe down and speak. Despite Enrique's cautious words, Einar paid no heed and forged ahead. No matter how well you cut through the sky, no trace remains. But what if here, we could eternally mark the presence of Ulrich's son, the great Einar? No, wait, just listen. Quang, with grand ambition revealed, Einar raised the axe and, right then, cleaved through a mountain right before their eyes. In the week that followed, spent evading the swarming dragon nests and demon armies, wasting time in escape like disturbing a beehive, the hero, a man named Maximilian, said with a smile, I cut through the sky. I cut through more. Well, I cleaved a mountain. Isn't shaping something formless a far loftier deed than shaping something already there? Just prattling big words doesn't make you smarter, kid. Old man. Keep it up, you'll really get it. Why he was so fixated on the sky, I don't know. But Ivan vividly recalls that bizarre escape. That day, what he probably wanted while splitting the night sky was maybe not seeing. Amidst the vile clouds surrounding the demon's realm, unseen, perhaps he just wanted to confirm that the evening star still shone in its place. In this way, the hero party was a den of lunatics, madmen, and the delusional. And among them, the one who was the craziest and shone the brightest. Gilver, who hoped to excel beyond others, became a guardian of Tis royal lands. Einar, who sought great feats, conquered his homeland and built Dran's first unified kingdom. And the hero, Maximilian, perhaps just wanted to confirm that hope still lingered. So, Ivan didn't like the hero. He simply admired him. It's been over 4 years since that cheerful lad vanished. The world still remembers the hero, but Maximilian was being forgotten. Episode 5, Dawn Star. 2 weeks passed in the blink of an eye. Ivan, feeling as if he hadn't rested at all, watched the passing scenery outside the window, thinking it felt just like the end-of-year vacation that disappears without a trace. It was the road leading to Tiles, and this time, he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by 5 men who were eyeing him cautiously. Wow, a real terrorist incident is happening. How did you know? Date, time, and place, all exactly right. Spill it. They were agents from the Kraslov reconnaissance headquarters. The annoying junior, Dmitri, having forced the information out of Ivan. When Dmitri grabbed his hand, swinging it around with excitement upon Ivan's return from thwarting Asidas's terror, there was an apologetic look in his eyes. But his eyes were not laughing at all. It was only natural. A guy who had been living quietly, almost like a retired vegetable, for 4 years suddenly predicting a national-level terrorist threat. Of course, that raised eyebrows, while others might have passed it off with a wow, that's impressive. Ivan, on the other hand, belonged to the Kraslov Reconnaissance Headquarters, holding a high rank even as a lieutenant colonel in the investigation department. Therefore, his eyes were clearly saying this: you've got something hidden. Come on, be honest. I'm genuinely curious. How did you manage to create a spy network under our noses? Will you share your expertise? Without a proper explanation, he would have to undergo numerous verifications and suspicions in the future. Dealing with the official processes of the Academy was a job that couldn't be explained without information monopolies. But, annoying, there was no need to reveal it. Authority always emerged from mystery. Ivan didn't feel the need to dispel the suspicion that he might have a secret extra-national information organization. So, here they were. He had support from 5 inept agents. Ivan let out a short sigh. Is this what it has come to? Should I play the role of a kindergarten teacher here? The agents all flinched at his sigh. Petrovich, if there's anything uncomfortable for you, all of you. Ivan decided to firmly establish his authority this time. Although basic training wasn't under his jurisdiction, how could he retire peacefully with agents of the motherland, his motherland being South Korea? Being so lax. Why were intelligence agents wearing the same clothes in the first place? What were they implying? And with the place so empty, it was suspiciously crowded. Who could overlook that? This was intolerable. Of course, their real purpose was probably gathering information about Ivan. But even that was not true intelligence work. This couldn't be ignored. Listen carefully. A speech from the director of the orphanage, from the extermination unit, served 18 years in the military, participated in the Dragon Party and operations, and has a record of defeating the 7 dragons. Now that the train journey was free, it would take 18 hours to reach the capital of Tiles, San Matenia. The operative's time seemed to freeze in place. He's not coming out after all. Isabel scanned the platform relentlessly until just before boarding the train bound for Krasilov. The higher the expectations, the greater the disappointment. Yet, despite consistently facing disappointment, she still carried expectations, scanning people with anticipation, wondering if someone might be hiding among them. Kaiyik. The person she was waiting for didn't appear even as the train released a long puff of steam. Miss, don't worry. He always thinks about you. Is that so? Well, maybe. Isabel replied coldly, turning her head, dismissing the hand that had patted her shoulder. The neat knight, provided by the Tis royal family as a guard, retreated with an awkward smile. Trash. Useless. A pathetic creature trying to mask its discomfort with a forced smile, pretending to be fine even when insulted. For her, most people were animals, not in a biological sense, but merely beasts. Father. Memories of the hero, Maximilian, were faint. The hero spent most of his time on the battlefield, while she remained in the palace with her mother. As the hero's fame grew, the expressions of those approaching her became simpler. Only friendly smiles from those who wanted to win the favor of the future heroine. It was natural. If you thought the hero could defeat even the Demon King right away, after the Demon King's death, everything would revolve around the hero. Individual strength may not overcome a group, but if you possessed strength and achievements that overwhelmed the group, even the nation would be subject to the individual. Therefore, the Tis royal family tried hard to win her favor. In a situation where they couldn't contact the hero directly, this was the only way to impress him. From noblemtl.com. No matter how much she ranted, no matter what insults she threw, she just smiled. As if everyone visible had the same expression. At least, it couldn't positively influence the emotional education of a child. Go away. I don't want to see your face. But miss, shut up. The knight faltered at Isabel's words, bowed with a gentle smile, and left the room. Finally alone in the room, Isabel chuckled with a sly smile. Idiot. Just before closing the door, that is, when she turned her head and looked back, remembering the twisted expression of the knight, contorted like a demon. Isabel, the offspring of a hero, possessed a keen sense that set her apart from others. She could instantly detect even the slightest change in a person's expression, in the blink of an eye. So, this is how it is. She had learned too early that everyone around her always regarded her with a sense of unease. Therefore, fool, she mocked herself, sinking into her seat. A child who knew no way of expressing herself other than getting angry and ridiculing others. A self-destructive lunatic who found solace only in witnessing others get angry. A severe case of love deficiency where only the hatred of others seemed genuine. Constantly waiting for a father whose memory had now faded, simultaneously resenting him. A separation anxiety patient. That was her self-diagnosis. We're going to leave now, Comrade Petrovich. You still use the term we. Are you going to boast that we all came together? Well. Be clear in your expressions, firm in your actions, and always keep your intentions hidden deep within. Ugh. That's right. The agents all inwardly screamed. Lieutenant Dmitri. This gentleman is so quiet. They said. You're a monster, Petrovich. I hate you, Ivan. Forever. As the threat of 18 hours of sermonizing, coupled with special duty incentive training, loomed over them, the agents, pale and fed up, roughly saluted and left. Their mission, to protect Oscar, the son of the fallen knight, Ivan, who had put in half-hearted effort to remove the shackles Dmitri had attached and genuinely dedicated himself to education, watched Isabel board the train from the historical platform. Lucky. Getting rid of the agents from the intelligence headquarters and protecting Oscar, it was like catching two birds with one stone. Ivan lightly boarded the train, feeling as if he had thrown two burdens away. Chapter 12, 12-5. Morning Star, 2. The express train, starting from Matilene, Tila's capital, and arriving at the Freichenkaya of Kraslov, passes through a total of 4 military zones. Once, passing through the Tila's 3rd Guards Division, and once crossing the northwest border. Again, passing the Kraslov Border Defense Division once, and passing the Freichenkaya Defense Headquarters once. The presence of intensely deployed forces, near the front lines with the demons, is indicative of the severity of the situation. Therefore, if one were to use elimination tactics, the regions vulnerable to terrorism are confined to just 3 stations. Among the roughly 30 stations this train passes through, it means there are only 3 that lack support troops within a day's distance, are sparsely populated, and have challenging terrain. 1. The train Ivan and Isabella on has passed the first ambush point. There were no villains attempting to interfere with the tracks or spellcasters raining down magic or artillery from horseback. 2. At the second ambush point, the train raced swiftly along the tracks. Ivan, looking out the window, sighed and took his seat. A few hours later, in the silence, the train passed the third ambush point. What's going on? The train had now crossed the Kraslov border. If it continued straight, it would reach Freichenkaya in a day. Now, after passing through the plains and crossing just one mountain, it would be Freichenkaya. Although there was a forest to traverse in the middle, there was only one division stationed nearby. So, from now on, it might be impossible to attempt terrorism. Ivan nervously caressed his pistol. Did I miscalculate? Wasn't the tutorial unified as a train terrorism? Was it is just extremely unlucky? Or was it that in the original game, tutorials were designed differently for each character? He had considered that each would progress through their unique story, but the initial design was difficult. It's because this is an academy story. It had to be like that, but it had to be like that. Ivan bit his lip. If he had misjudged again, what should he do? If this wasn't even an academy story, does this damn world even have an ending? Should he commit suicide? Is there an answer other than suicide? Since the genre can't be predicted, the ending cannot be determined. The worst assumption is if the ending belongs only to the protagonist. If the essence of this world is the RPG of the hero's king, wouldn't the hero's hiding place be decisive evidence? Why did the hero choose hiding? Was that the man's ending? Then, the remaining world. We are. No, I am. What should I do? Ivan's thoughts became increasingly tangled. No. I hate it. I don't want to remain in this damn world any longer. I want to rest. I want to let go of everything and leave. I want to lie in a soft bed in a comfortable house, wrapped in a luxurious silk blanket, and sleep for a week. I want to eat everything I crave until my stomach bursts, engage in conversations with people who use Hangul, discuss games, novels, movies, dramas, and variety shows. Death, poverty, famine, and fear prevail. Yet, I don't want to live any longer in this damn fantasy world where the concepts of welfare and leisure are faint. Sob. The man sitting next to him groaned palely, struggling for breath. The sticky vitality flowing from Ivan's body was spreading like poison. But Ivan, number. Kim Sun-woo was currently too preoccupied to pay attention to his own condition. Sharper and the more intense, to the point of actually harming people. As Kim Sun-woo's panic intensified, the train, crossing a bridge over a valley after passing through a tunnel under a mountain, shook violently. It was an explosion. Kwang kick. Not stopping at just breaking the tracks. The explosion caused the entire bridge to collapse. The train helplessly slid down below, twisting and turning as it maintained its momentum. In the midst of his body floating and the surroundings flipping, Ivan instinctively clenched the train's shelf tightly to maintain balance, surveying his surroundings out of instinct. He accurately grasped the situation amid the rapidly flipping space and the landscape sliding past the window. The train is plummeting. The train is plummeting. A train terror has occurred. The tutorial is not over. I was not wrong. There is still an ending. Inside the falling train car, a smile spread across Ivan's gaunt face. Slowly and deeply, forcibly shoving the useless Kim Sun-woo beneath his consciousness, who is still trapped in panic. Now is the time to deal with the things to be done. Fear, hatred, and confusion do not aid the mission. It's often said that the head remains cold while the heart burns, but those words are wrong. In the Annihilation Division, they teach differently. Keep your head, your heart, and your fingertips cold. Like the harsh winter of Kraslov. Like that endless night. Cold, silent, meticulous. The officer of the Annihilation Division disappeared quietly, engulfed in chaos within the vehicle. Stepping over railings, treading on shelves, pushing aside tangled heaps of baggage, upward, upward, upward. The last moment Isabel remembers is a fragmented list of words. A body thrown out, a wildly shaking view, overwhelming pain, broken car windows and pouring soil, and, contorting as it tears apart, the vehicle. And one more. Gasp. Isabel awoke with cold sweat streaming down her face. Darkness surrounded her on all sides. A moment passed as she glimpsed the fir-tree forest of Kraslov, illuminated by the evening glow. She rose, feeling a piercing pain. The room was buried in soil. As her eyes gradually adjusted to the darkness, she could discern the pile of dirt spilled through the broken window. And, drip, drop, the sound of water droplets. Huff, sigh, labored breathing. A feeble sound. Are you coming to your senses, miss? Captain August. A man stood before her. No, impaled. One arm buried in the soil, and a long piece of rebar sticking out from his side. The dripping sound came from his mouth and nose, and drops of blood fell from his waist. Why? He threw himself to protect her, blocking rocks falling on her with his entire body, taking the fragments of the crashing train on his back. She looked at the night with astonished gaze. As always, he wore a friendly smile. Miss, you must escape. Huff. You must run away. The flood will come. It's after you. Huff. Stop. Stop it. Answer me. Why did you do such a thing? Are you really insane? Isabel glared at the night with trembling eyes. Surely, if I die, my father will be angry. Don't you think? No, he cares about no one. I understand. The knight chuckled softly. Who wouldn't notice? The mysterious man who had abandoned all ties, secluding himself deep in the mountains, allowing no one to approach. Initially, those who thought he had left to heal the wounds inflicted after defeating the Demon King. Later, murmurs began about the corruption of the hero's heart by the Demon King. Before 4 years had passed, they started to forget about the hero. From the moment he killed the Demon King, or perhaps even before that, the hero was no longer an individual. Maximilian, under the name of a hero, had become insignificant. Now, only his achievements and myths echoed emptily. You hate me. Yes, but why? Because you're the daughter of the hero. From noblemtl.com. Even as the man's eyes shone strangely clear in the midst of death, Isabel laughed as if finding the situation absurd. So what? Do you really think our father would spare a penny of attention for that daughter of his? No, miss. I've never thought about Maximilian's interest. Yet, he was the daughter of a hero. He, as an individual, could instill hope in the hearts of all humanity. We spent those times together. And even such a great man is dwindling away in time, becoming just another person leaving descendants. Maximilian is also a person, a proposition anyone can agree with, yet a sentence no one truly understands. But Isabel is different. She is a person, angry, jealous, sad, a young girl suffering from a lack of affection. So, The existence of Isabel itself signifies that the hero is ultimately human. In turn, if one is human, they can become a hero. He believed that even if Isabel hated him, she couldn't help but affirm the existence of Isabel. She was hope, the last seed left by the hero. Its germination symbolized hope. In this era, where people rebuild the fallen ground left after the war of the past, it is not the hope of the conscripts fighting against the Demon King, but the hope for the individual living each day. If the hero was called the symbol of victory, the hero's offspring is the symbol of reconstruction, the symbol of a new era. Therefore, he despised Isabel while sacrificing himself, because he was a knight of Tias, a man who could abandon the individual for the greater good. Also, a commoner who did not seek the reconstruction of humanity. Excellent. When his words came to an end, a thud resonated, and amidst the pile of dirt that poured into the car window, an arm shot out. The arm fumbled around in the dirt for a while before smoothly pulling itself out. The cold air of the late winter night coolly infiltrated the room as the open window allowed the azure moonlight to seep through. Knight, what is your name? Diane August. And you? Ivan Petrovich. As the pile of dirt crumbled, a man entered the room, bathed in moonlight, casting long shadows of darkness. Do you want to live? If possible. It will hurt. Ivan opened the cap of a healing potion. Chapter 13. 13-5. Morning Star. 3. Night. Diane August endured the agonizing pain of the loathsome confession with a will as strong as steel. Isabel remembered it that way. What mattered wasn't the time when Sir August cursed at her, screaming obscenities, or the incident where Ivan, a man, grabbed his arm and tried to leak the records of the night's accounting ledger. Of course, Isabel, who found it difficult to witness such scenes, immediately struck Sir August's face. After listening to a sermon on how dangerous it is to mess with the person whose head was spewing blood from Ivan, Sir August was finally able to speak. Mum? Yes. After examining the well-healed wound, Ivan gave a clear diagnosis. Shock-induced regression. Isabel, it's your fault for hitting him. Reflect on it. Do you think Sir August won't recover? Can he return to how he was before? Don't worry. It's a common symptom, and with time, he'll regain his senses. After glancing outside for a moment, Ivan spoke, but screaming too much drew attention. The ones lurking on the mountain will start coming down soon, so we need to be prepared. And Sir August? I'll carry him. Ivan gazed at Isabel, who was also looking at him. After a moment of silence, Isabel, finally understanding Ivan's gesture, asked, bewildered, me? Yes. And you? We have to fight. I can fight too. Ivan looked down at Isabel and shook his head. She certainly had exceptional abilities, almost unmatched among her peers, but her mindset didn't match. Her complexion paled at such events, and her hand holding the knife trembled incessantly. Seems so. His words and actions contradict each other. You've hit the nail on the head. Ivan chuckled and turned away. Isabel, left alone in the room, sighed heavily and lifted Diane onto her back. It was heavy. It wasn't weakened to the extent of being unable to bear the weight of an adult man. The dumbbells she used during training were heavier than Diane, but the weight of this injured and weakened man pressed down on her shoulders. As she struggled to hoist Diane up and walked out, Ivan, standing with his back to the moon, suddenly turned to look at her. You do have some talent. That's really insulting. Sir, do you happen to know me? When did you see me to speak about our words? Seems your temperament resembles your mother's. Oh, making a man draw his sword. So, which side of the family is that, the maternal or the paternal gene? Well, I've forgotten both of their faces by now. What? That's absurd. Oh, though her features and skin seemed strangely youthful, she tightly shut her eyes, looking at the thick, unkempt beard that covered Ivan's entire jaw. It had barely been 4 years since the war ended, and that war had lasted for almost 20 years. Naturally, for people of that age, losing parents during the war wasn't unusual. She felt strangely unjust. No, if one didn't have parents, was it all right? Bringing up parents was quite impolite. Wasn't that the case in Krasalope? Wasn't that just a form of greeting? Such inquiries about one's parents were considered a courteous greeting in Rowan but not in Krasalope. After grumbling for a while, she finally understood Ivan's words and was taken aback. Do you know my father? Ivan smiled subtly at the little one's expression, where emotions changed rapidly. Well, who could truly understand Maximilian? He shrugged and spoke. "Gather the survivors. Make a fire and tear the train seats to use as blankets. The winter night on this land will be harsher than you think. If we make a fire, won't it attract attacks? That's not something you need to worry about. You're going alone, without knowing who the enemy is? That's also not something you need to worry about." Meeting Maximilian's daughter for the first time, Ivan felt a somewhat unexpected emotion. Appearance and talent resemble her father, but her personality is completely different. Maximilian used to boast about his hometown sweetheart, describing her as affectionate and considerate, especially during winter nights. It seems she takes after her mother. Love is dangerous like this, preventing people from facing flaws and weaknesses. Ivan chuckled and left the place. In the tactical doctrine Ivan learned, there was a saying, "Assume the worst and act with the best." It was so obvious that Ivan used to scoff at it back then. That was until he reconsidered the sentence through practical experience. The truth of that sentence was like this: assume the worst. In other words, the enemy always attempts to attack in the most difficult way possible. Act with the best. This means if your opponent is the worst possible for you, you must become such a presence for that opponent. Therefore, imitate the opponent's tactics. The worst attack you can think of will become the best assault you can deliver to the enemy. So, what Ivan had to do now was clear. First, assume the most dreadful situation. Being ambushed during survival escape would be the worst. It will get worse if we engage in a delaying action. Intermittent attacks in the dark night worsen fatigue. While Ivan might endure, it's a lethal attack for the wounded and the little one. So, assuming the worst, the opponent must anticipate Ivan and his party escaping. Logically, when a train is derailed due to someone's attack, they should leave the scene and request support. Now consider the countermeasure. Nonchalantly dragging out time, leaving the opponent's goals visibly exposed to appear powerless. As a result, the personnel scattered for tracking must be retrieved. It's time to change tactics from pursuit to encirclement. This world is not a strategic simulation game. Unfortunately, it's more like an academy drama. The soldiers don't immediately output actions just because you input commands. That means a delay in time occurring when retrieving the tracking team. From that moment, gaining an advantage in tactical layers and starting. And from the position of attack, the encirclement usually comes with a psychological advantage. They'll see themselves as a mouse in poison, ready to be caught at any moment. Therefore, the opponent will choose the attack timing more carefully. At the point of retrieving the tracking team, to ensure the target doesn't escape, with the intention of delivering an unavoidable blow at the optimal timing. This is the next best option, the worst attack the opponent could think of. So, they mimic, making the enemy's best become their worst. Preparing for a surprise, refining the attack carefully, and unfolding the encirclement. Sigh. In the deep shadows of the thick forest, holding a cold gun tightly, Ivan quietly breathed in and let out a short exhale. Crouching under the trees, slowly raising his hand, careful to draw a straight line with his shoulder and fingertips. Suppressing hand tremors as much as possible by following the rhythm of his body. Click. Slowly, pulling the trigger with the momentum of 3 breaths, ensuring the aim doesn't shake from the index finger inside the trigger guard. Soon. Bang. Pistol sniper technique, a shooting method designed for eradication unit agents who need to conceal rifles in urban areas to launch long-range attacks with pistols. A silhouette about the size of a thumbnail collapsed under the moonlight. No need to rush or reload. Hit on the first shot. Soon, an uneasy atmosphere spread through the forest. The enemy had also realized from the gunshot the ambush had begun. Moreover, they would soon realize the eradication unit's ambush had begun. In the dark night and deep forest, with familiar terrain and suitable weapons in hand, the eradication unit's ambush meant individuals could encircle a group. Bang! When gunfire echoed in the distant forest, Isabel concealed her trembling hands, preparing for the enemy's assault. It was clearly the sound announcing the beginning of a fight. Birds startled in their slumber, flying away in panic. The people gathered around her, shivering in front of the bonfire, gazing at her. Are we all going to die now? So scary. It's so scary. Mama. From NobleMTL.com. The sounds of survivors, each with at least fractures, echoed around her as they limped and staggered. Amidst confusion, burden, and guilt, Isabel reluctantly lowered her head. They were victims entangled because of her. The fact that there were only a dozen survivors from the large train weighed heavily on her shoulders. Then, A low voice came from behind her. The reason we call a hero is not because he is the strongest, but because he is the bravest. Sir August, are you in your right mind? August, who had been leaning on her back, spoke with a somewhat absent voice. So, we should not become heroes. We should not even try. We must recognize our own weakness. Sir August, we must stand in the position of the weak. Look at people like us with the eyes of the weak. The reason we wield a sword is not because we are brave, not because we are strong, not because we are superior to others. August's voice still lacked ease, but strangely, it was clear and precise, as if trying to carve each letter into her heart. The reason we wield a sword is because it is right, because it is just. For the sake of the justice we must uphold. Therefore, wielding a sword is no different from donating to the poor every day and occasionally supporting the injured. It is only natural. It is just. Sir August. So, raise your sword. Do not try to become a hero. You, Knight of Thales, stand here with humility, not bravery. Now she could understand what Diana was talking about. This was a very old and traditional knightly training process. Not the authority bestowed by the Lord on his knight. It was the final lesson from the order of knights to their successors. Diana August was a figure from a traditional order of knights, and even now, having lost his ease, he continued to recite the most memorable words in his heart. Raise your sword for justice. Doing good is always a small and proper thing. Raise your sword not for your strength but for your justice. Now, your name is a knight. Diane did not speak again after those words. He only exhaled weakened breaths. Isabel knew about Diane's history. This man had served as a seasoned mid-level knight since the war with the demon army. Now, she could understand why a sentence he might have heard just once a decade ago remained so clear and undistorted in his heart. She felt that she, too, would never forget this moment for the rest of her life. She stood up from her seat and finally raised her head to survey the surroundings. Many people were looking at her, suffering from cold, fear, pain, and hunger. Those who had been driven by her guilt still pressed on her shoulders, but now, nonetheless, she could feel. I will do so. Slowly lowering the Diana, Isabel stood upright before them. The black sword gripped in her hand felt heavier than before, but the trembling hand from moments ago now calmly embraced the hilt, holding it firmly. In her eyes, a new star was rising. Chapter 14, 14-5. Morning Star, 4. Bang, dang. With each intermittent gunshot, the sensation of enemies scattering could be felt. It wasn't merely due to their lack of training. On the contrary, it was inevitable, especially for elite forces. When ambushed, a competent officer would gauge the enemy's numbers based on the frequency of attacks. If you observe the intervals between gunshots, the enemy consists of only one person or a small group. Up to this point, it was expected. However, the problem arose when the gunshots did not originate from a single direction within this forest. Once from the east, dang. If forces were redirected there, suddenly, only corpses remained in that direction. In the confusion of dispersing troops, again from the west, dang. At this point, it was clear what the commanding officer on the opposing side was thinking. They're scattering a small number of troops to lead us into a trap. A precise assessment. Unless the adversary was a commander of an annihilation unit on the field. Click. Feeling the tension, vitality, and anger saturating the atmosphere of the forest, he slowly raised his pistol. 3 soldiers ahead were looking around with torches in hand. It was either an action driven by fear or one fueled by anger. There was no visible difference when observed from a distance. Ivan took a long breath, half firmly pressing down, controlling his breath, aimed the muzzle at the opponent, raised it 5 notches, smoothly, like the flow of water, almost instinctive movements from learning. Up to this point, it took 0.3 seconds. Wide open as your eyes quickly scanned the surroundings, the distance between the 3 soldiers, their height differences, and the distance from him as a reference point. After calculating, he filled his sight with the furthest one. Fired. Dang. The moment the gun fired, he lowered it and wielded the axe. There's no need to confirm the kill. They'll let you know. Jegirel. Enough got hit. Where are you? Come out. Damn it. Swiftly leaping over the trees, the torches they were brandishing in the next area served as excellent beacons in themselves. Setting a fire in the forest is aesthetically pleasing. Of course, the forest is so dark that nothing would be visible without the torches, but that's probably not their fault. Shouldn't have chosen a day like this. Night raids, fundamentally, are extremely challenging. It requires the exceptional skills of the commander and the perfect training condition of all the troops. Even they would hesitate in the face of a surprise attack in the forest at night, especially in a foreign forest. Perhaps about a third of them dropped out shortly after the operation started. So, the enemy's total force is around 50. Considering the degree of enemy dispersion and the size of the dispersed enemy units, Ivan thought so. Standing above the soldier holding the torch, Ivan gripped his axe, contemplating, and then brought it down. Quang! He's a coward. The guy hit by the axe couldn't even scream once. But it seems he's received proper training. Judging by how he raised his gun the moment Ivan appeared. Ivan lowered his waist. His fingers, trembling on the trigger, slid into the guy's shaky trigger hand. There's no aiming process. It's meaningless at this distance, and the guy didn't have the presence of mind for it. In panic, he shoots first and asks questions later. But it can't go like that. Die. Hearing those words, Ivan gave strength to his thigh. The tendons on the back of his hand bulged. At that moment, Ivan, who had already closed the distance, swung his axe. The right shoulder and the back of the neck broke simultaneously. Literally, broke. A powerful blow, quickly twisting his body for another strike. Again, another strike. 3 axe blows were delivered in a rhythmic sequence. No one in this spot could speak anymore. Phew. Ivan shrugged, relaxed his shoulders, and stuck the axe in. Taking the gun from the unknown soldier and aiming it at the sky, he threaded the trigger string through and hung it over the adjacent tree. If he firmly secured the gun in the embrace of the dead body and fixed it tightly, his job here would be done. Gunshots echoed, signaling that someone would soon arrive at this location. The moment someone touches this corpse, the loaded gun will go off, and the command center will likely misjudge Ivan's position in confusion. The delay in information reaching the command center, the limited visibility from the dark forest, the fear of an unfamiliar environment, the confusion of information, and the gradual reduction of allies. The more skilled the enemy, the easier it is to deceive. Ivan thought as he ran along the treetops. So, this is strange. The enemies are too skilled to be considered part of a tutorial. Diane August was an NPC assisting Isabel's tutorial and disappearing. Ivan squinted his eyes. In this situation, if it weren't for him, could Isabel have survived and escaped this forest alone? Considering the ample weapons, well-trained troops, and a competent command center of the enemy. Now, a 20-year-old might not be able to handle the level of danger. Why isn't wiping out the enemy a tutorial clear condition? Sometimes there are such cases in games where you have to learn manipulation while fleeing from a formidable enemy. But how and where to? Considering the distance to Prysanka, the probability of an inexperienced kid safely leaving the forest is close to 0. Even in the midst of confusion, Ivan didn't stop his steps. Contemplation can come after the situation is over. It's never too late, Captain. It happened again. This time all 3 were cut with axes, a soldier reported. Oh dear. What is this? The man sighed, running his hand over his chin. It felt like facing a tiger, dealing with them one by one, starting with the weak ones, squeezing the necks of the group. It was a hunting technique. The countermeasure was simple. Concentrate the troops. But he couldn't do that. His goal was the hero's daughter. Wouldn't it be better to gather the kids now? Foolish. Isn't that exactly what those outside want right now? The enemies were few, a natural course of action. If they had faced a large-scale attack, they wouldn't resort to such troublesome methods. Let's assume that a highly elite strike force is scattered in that forest right now. Bang! Gunshots echoed once again, this time from the west. And shortly after, bang! Now, from beyond the north. The gunfire gradually closed in on his location. They already know our position. Really? They already know that this place is the headquarters. How foolish. Don't you get it? Oh, yes. I mean, yes, but then why don't they just attack us directly? After striking the headquarters, wouldn't it be much simpler to hunt down the disoriented forces one by one? Why go through the trouble of all this? That. Bang. Bang. At the end of the 2 gunshots coming from different directions, a shocking realization flashed through the man's mind. Give me the gun. Sure? Oh, yes. Snatching the man's gun, he fired into the air. Bang. From noblemtl.com. For a moment, the man stood frozen, then soon, a growling voice emerged. It's one of ours. But, Captain, the direction of the shots. Damn it, it's a trick. Thud. The man thrust the gun into the ground, picked up the wreckage, and drew a knife. He shot first to gauge our reaction. Did he have a sniper or not? Our response was too quick. Damn it. Ordinary soldiers usually find cover the moment they hear gunfire. However, it wasn't the headquarters. Their leader possessed radar detection. As soon as gunfire echoed, they immediately dispatched trackers, estimating the direction of the shots. It was an ambush. Why wouldn't they attack straight on? Either they lacked confidence, or delaying would put them in a difficult situation. Trained individuals like them wouldn't entertain such thoughts, right? Yeah, being alone. Exactly. Damn it all. The gunfire was a decoy from the start. Gather everyone. Damn it, I didn't want to face the daughter of a warrior directly. Scars on the man's face twisted. A warrior's daughter. Even if she inherited only half of the warrior's traits, a monster was still a monster. He remembered the warrior, the absurd incarnation of powerless rage. No matter how young he was, one shouldn't let their guard down. Their warrior was just a kid of about 30 back then. The man shrugged and took a step forward. I'll personally deal with that woman. Gather the men and bring the captives from the forest. Yes, Captain. Are you the daughter of the warrior? Isabel stood under the moonlight, facing a man who emerged from the forest. Behind her, people huddled in fear, gathered around a campfire, shivering in the cold as they watched her. Isabel shook her head. Closing her eyes, taking a deep breath, she forced the heavy sword into shape, gripping it firmly. No. She opened her eyes. The moonlight illuminated the surroundings dimly, making the silhouette of the man clearer. Fighting for her life and carrying someone else's life into battle were both new to her. But it's okay. It's for justice. I am the daughter of Maximilian and Maria. Not the daughter of a warrior, but a daughter of two people. With that meaning, the man in front of her laughed heartily. Horns protruded above his head toward the sky. A demon. Isabel swallowed her saliva. It was her first time facing a demon. Excellent. The man nodded and gripped his sword. I am Fellows, a white soldier from the 6th Division of the Imperial Guard under General Bekin Jiang. Isabel, affiliated with Ailes. A night. The night wind whispers, causing the pine forest to shiver. In the distance, gunshots from Azrai echo. The two rushed toward each other. Chapter 15. 15-5. Morning Star. 5. The tutorial is too difficult. As soon as he recalled those words, Kim Sun-woo's inner self trembled. But Ivan ignored Sun-woo's reaction and continued his thoughts. This is really tough. Even objectively imagining Sun-woo's era and the progress of the game, it's challenging. Ivan leaned against a tree, sighed, and exhaled. Just one guy. Even if there was someone at Dmitri's level among the members, it wouldn't have been such a fight. Kill two soldiers at the eastern end, set traps, sprint to the western end intentionally making gunshots. After repeating such actions for over 30 minutes, even Ivan is getting tired. Since gunfire should ring out only once per skirmish, the difficulty has doubled. Thanks to that, he has earned a long sword wound on his arm. Ivan took out the last healing potion but stopped. It's bearable. Let's not use this. Taking a break to catch his breath, Ivan sat under a tree and organized his thoughts. Let's assume this is the tutorial right after choosing the character Isabel. I've passed the character selection screen. Now, in the loading screen, the world setting like what the hell is this, you otaku, spills out, and the loading bar completes. If it's a AAA grade game, there would be a cutscene here. Conveniently, there is. Train terrorism. Academy cliché. Now, the train terrorism happens, and she wakes up in a pile of dirt. In front of her, an NPC is wounded in her place. If we play from here, there's a problem. How did she escape? Escaping from the buried car is a problem itself. Let's assume there's a puzzle inside that, solving which would allow her to escape. After that, elite soldiers of unknown identity rush in, without explaining the combat system, and on top of that, the tutorial boss. There was line of sight detection. Thinking about Echidna's case, it's even stranger. His tutorial was simple enough to crack with one hand. Then, was this not a combat event but an escape event? Or perhaps it was a defeat event. It might be an event where you escape after being captured. There are many games like that. These guys were trying to kill Isabel. The armed forces weren't considering capture, they were clearly contemplating murder. If that's the case, it meant he shouldn't get caught. Usually, in defeat events, the player is rescued by allies immediately after the battle. Rescued allies. Me. Ivan's expression cooled down icily. His chest tightened. Was I the ally? In other words, Was I an NPC? Ivan forcefully suppressed the pounding of his heart. Controlling boiling emotions was a familiar task. He calmly counted on his fingers one by one. Was there a character named Ivan Petrovich in the original game? Serving in the military, rolling around like a dog for 18 years, fighting with a spear against civilians, and even establishing an orphanage after retiring. Were all those events preset? If so, what would be the fate of the original Ivan Petrovich? Would he survive until the end? Would his face be revealed in the ending scene? Forcibly cutting off negative thoughts that were surfacing, Ivan placed a healing potion inside his bag. There was only one way to confirm. Why did the difficulty of this event become so chaotic this time? Was it truly a situation where without allies, death was inevitable? Swiftly climbing up a tree, he moved towards the train. Chang Kagak. The blades clashed, sparks flying. Despite the force, and difficult to gain an advantage with skill alone, Isabel bit down on it, twisting the blade. A beautiful, textbook perfect parry, as if copying the swordsmanship manual. The trajectory smoothly continued without the slightest error, deflecting the enemy's sword. It was the best Isabel could do. She had no confidence in delivering a more beautiful attack than this. Sometimes there are guys like that. Apollos laughed, parrying Isabel's sword. Have you seen those geese stuck in their rooms, swinging a stick alone, claiming they'll perform faster and more flexible attacks, memorizing textbooks like model students? Huh? Shut up. You're wrong. A Knight of Tears. Kang. Kang. The attack is being blocked. However, every attempt at defense inevitably resulted in more than a mere setback. Though there were no visible wounds yet, Isabel could feel it. Gradually, she was being pushed into a corner. The distribution between offense and defense is a mess. Unable to take another step forward, she could only retreat further and further backward. And behind her were civilians, ones she had to protect. There's no turning back now. With determination, Isabel, her external and internal forces in unison, swung her sword. Clang. Isn't the essence of swordsmanship about making contact with the opponent? Ultimately, swordplay is just a methodology of driving the blade into the opponent's body. Clang. Being the daughter of a hero and experiencing such a situation at this age, it's nauseating to witness the indolence of the alliance. Shut up. Clang. Clang. The anger-fueled sword no longer guaranteed the finesse of technique. It swung haphazardly, driven by the desire to vent frustration. But Isabel had too much experience dealing with such clumsy attacks. Clang. Clang. She twisted the blade, flicking her wrist to deflect the blows. The sword slipped from Isabel's hand, bouncing and rolling on the ground. In reality, it could have been finished a bit faster. However, the concept of hero's bloodline heightened his vigilance. After all, a hero, Maximilian, always pulled off miraculous feats at the last moment. But now it's over. Eplios chuckled. Only precious soldiers were lost for nothing. No one could protect you, Isabel, Maximilian's daughter. Do you have any last words? Isabel stared at the fallen sword, biting her lips. Facing death with composure is commendable, but now she had to look at her opponent. Immaturity. Eplios mocked Isabel, raising his sword. Ivan watched the scene from the tree. No intention to save her. He just had to confirm. If Isabel dies here, it means his prediction was wrong. Of course, there might be games where you get a game over by losing to a tutorial boss, but this wasn't one of them. The opponent seemed too strong for his current specs. On the other hand, if he rushed in now to save Isabel, well, now, it couldn't be denied. Confirming that Ivan Petrovich is just an NPC in this game. So, even if Isabel dies, he won't intervene. After all, the player character still has 5 more lives. If sacrificing one reveals something, it's a good deal. Ivan gazed down at Isabel in the distance, lost in thought. No one has protected Maximilian's daughter, Isabel. Do you have any last words? Time seemed to slow for Isabel, like the flickering of a candle nearing its end. The flowing blade like waves, the face of the demon filled with anger and the mockery. The distorted moonlight, the rough sound of her own breath. Her sword lay fallen at her feet. A testament to her efforts and time discarded like trash. Raise the sword. A voice echoed. The words of Sir Auguste Diane, who mumbled unconscious. A very, very old ceremony of the Night Order. Consciousness slipped away a bit more. Vague images floated in. From noblemtl.com. Amidst a multitude of people, One person knelt. Stand in the position of the weak and look at those like us with the eyes of the weak. The reason we raise the sword is not for our courage, strength, or superiority. It is simply because it is right. For the justice we must uphold. A solemn declaration resounds. The knights lined up in the hall raise their swords in unison. The old man at the forefront raises his sword, gently lowering the blade down. Carefully, like a baptism. A swift motion, placing the blade on the head of the one who kneels. Because it is natural to raise the sword. Not for your strength, but for your justice. Raise the sword. Again, a swift motion. Tapping both shoulders. Now, your name is a knight. Look at those like us with the eyes of the weak. Isabel awoke in silence, her breath even paused. The demon's blade was descending towards her head. Slowly, but her body felt heavier and slower than that. And behind her, sounds of fear, shock, screams, and howls filled the air. Stand in the position of the weak and look at those like us with the eyes of the weak. For your justice, not for your strength, raise the sword. The voice still echoed. Yes, I will. Isabel reached out towards the fallen sword as if entranced. She grasped the hilt. Her body felt light, as if it had never been this way in her entire life. The muscles throughout her body flexed, then gathered with strength she had never known. When the sword of fellows hovered just above her head, Isabel had already assumed her stance. Whoosh! Silence fell from everyone around, even the wind. Not even the trembling breeze of the forest could distract Isabel's ears at this moment. The clouds parted, and the moonlight shone brightly again. The survivors behind her forgot even to breathe, their eyes fixed on the scene before them. Above the crouched Isabel's head, the blade halted, and, grotesquely, it protruded from the massive demon's back like a sprouting branch. How? Fellows couldn't comprehend the situation. He glared at Isabel standing below him with a vacant gaze. No expression showed, for her head was bowed. Yet in that moment, he could discern distinctly. This little one. This knight had just taken a step forward. Fellows chuckled in disbelief. Pierced not just by a warrior but by his own daughter? He coughed up blood and staggered back. With a clang, the sword slipped from his hand. He staggered, retreating, and collapsed to his knees. Phew! Isabel, too, drove the sword into the ground and sank to one knee, gasping for air. Exhausted completely. Yet, she had prevailed. She had saved everyone standing behind her. Ultimately, she had saved all who remained. Remarkable. In a low voice, she raised her head abruptly. A man was approaching in the distance, stepping steadily. His weather-beaten beard hid his expression, but his azure eyes glinted sharply even in the darkness. He was smiling. Seeing the blood-dripping arm, the coat torn messily by branches, it was clear he had been in some battle. She couldn't have done it alone. Had that been why she hadn't received aid? Isabel chuckled softly, nodding her head. The others. This one was the last. Impressive, truly. Well, with the look of someone beholding a well-grown nephew, the man chuckled softly. Isabel chuckled to herself, finding the words surprisingly accurate even in her solitary contemplation. Honestly, it seemed like this man regarded himself as no more than a nephew. Huh? What are you doing? Treatment. He was approaching the fallen demon, removing the vial lid of the confession potion. Phew, thank goodness. Kim Sun-woo let out a sigh. Indeed, fortunate. Ivan also smiled briefly. It was a typical early awakening event, part of the tutorial. Isabel probably killed all the enemies in this forest, likely annihilating everyone, including survivors, and emerged alone. Thanks to his intervention, all the survivors lived. Fortunately, it seemed that Ivan was the only variable in this world. Ivan sighed in relief. Well then, that was fine. With the fact that he wasn't an NPC alone, he could achieve enough. Now, there was only one thing left to do. What are you doing? Treatment. Why me? I have many questions. If the difference in tutorial difficulty between Esadizzy and Isabel was a common occurrence, then the other children of the warrior party would have some distribution of difficulty. Should he intervene, or is it okay to just observe? It was just right this time. Unlike with Esadizzy, this time the mastermind behind the terror had revealed themselves directly. He had to find out many things. How could demons boldly flaunt themselves near Frechenskaya? How many academy members were hiding, and what were they plotting? Who exactly was sitting in the leadership position? There was a lot to find out, and the Annihilation Squad had curiosity and plenty of means to satisfy that curiosity. Chapter 16. 16-5. Morning Star. 6. Do you think sparing my life means I'll betray you? Exclamation mark. This was Ivan's voice, heard when he pressed one knee against the shoulder of Fellows, lifting his mutilated arm. "Ha! Would you dare to torture me? Come, try it. I am Fellows, the commander of the 6th Dragon Brigade. The White Tiger Fellows." This was the sound he made when he tore open the area around the wound and between the torn chest, as he poured healing potion. Since he started pouring the healing potion, the voice of the once confident man began to waver. "Hydrochloric acid. This wretched curse upon you, human scum." The misunderstanding was left uncorrected. Yet, inwardly, he marveled. It was a wound that had completely torn apart one lung. Even just imagining the feeling of healing potions pouring over it made Ivan's chest feel heavy with anticipation. Fortunately, he had no memory of subjecting his body to healing potions with such severe injuries. When he had suffered the most severe injuries, he had lost consciousness. It was said that he almost bathed in potions, and even if he hadn't fainted, he would have lost consciousness at that moment. Ugh. It's useless. At this point, Ivan marveled. The fact that he was enduring the situation where the shattered lung was healing and the remnants of the healing potion were collecting inside the lung was remarkable in itself. But soon, he chuckled. "Remember me. I won't forget you either. Even in the afterlife." Slurp. He grimaced, his eyes gleaming fiercely, biting his tongue. A horrible sound, a slurping noise, echoed. At that moment, Ivan collected the potion and exhaled deeply. The guy fighting on the scene, still believing in such superstitions. Biting your tongue won't kill you. Humans are not made that fragile. The only way a person who cannot move can take their own life is through cardiac arrest. For some reason, the superstition that biting the tongue could lead to an honorable suicide was widely spread throughout the world. It's amazing, did anyone never accidentally commit suicide while eating? People like Ivan, who were professional agents, always had such doubts. The more brave warriors, knights, and generals on the battlefield, the more vulnerable they were to such superstitions, perhaps because honor and heroism were their idea of romance. Staring down at Fellows with a pitiful look for a while, Ivan sighed deeply and checked the remaining residue of the healing potion. This was the last bottle, and now there was only 1/3 left. "It will only prolong the pain this way. I don't want to torment you, Captain. This is a therapeutic act, and this potion is a healing potion." Stop. The wound will only get worse." He opened his mouth wide, poured the remaining healing potion down, and then tightly held his mouth shut. It seemed like he was trying to spit it out somehow, but soon, the guy's eyes softened. The half-cut tongue soaked in the healing potion went down the esophagus, spreading throughout the body with a gulp. Healing potions only treat trauma. Even if you drink it, it's difficult to gain any special benefits unless there is a perforation in the stomach or esophagus. Of course, if you're suffering from esophagitis, along with the feeling of your entire esophagus burning, you might be thoroughly cured, but that's beside the point. PFFT. Now you have the strength to speak. Spider Petrovich, Fellows, whose eyes had opened, began to mutter absent-mindedly. He turned his gaze, fixing it on the thick beard that covered Ivan's entire upper lip, then quickly moved his gaze upward, studying the eyes and forehead. "I heard you died. But this method? Extreme. Annihilation. Detachment. That's how it went." Was he someone who had been directly involved in activities on the battlefield during the war? Ivan squinted his eyes. "Why did you take matters into your own hands? It must not be good for your circumstances to throw someone like you away like a disposable item." If he was a major, he was just a low-ranking commander. In other words, he was nothing more than a common resource, certainly not an important figure. But that was a story from the time when the forces of the demons were still intact during the war. Most of the Demon King and the 7 Dragon Generals were dead, and the remaining remnants were scattered and driven out of the world. It had been several years since they all harbored their ambitions and engaged in individual battles based on the logic of power. If he was a major back then, now he was an esteemed active officer, a type whose military strength and command ability had been verified. Now, it's no longer the same. What? Did you think we would stubbornly pursue only failed operations? Alliance. Your negligence. Nauseating. Me. When they attacked Essidris, the demons had hired mercenaries while concealing their identity. Perhaps there were followers remaining within the alliance who assisted, and it ended in a spectacular failure. Afterward, They realized that the operation had collapsed even before it started. It had already been compromised before the operation was executed. You can't just trust the followers. There's a spy among us. Since they were considered leaked in the information warfare, they had to send someone trustworthy. It had to succeed. While it might not matter for others, only one person. They had to kill her as if she were the daughter of a warrior. But at the same time, they had to consider the possibility of failure. Sending an important figure and failing would be an irreparable blow. So, Fellows is the key. With a competent commander like him, even a moderately risky operation can succeed. And if it fails, the damage won't be too great. Just the right level of commander. Ivan looked down at Fellows with a bitter gaze. This guy understood his evaluation clearly. From NobleMTL.com. Even if the operation succeeds, he can't come back alive to erase any traces. Even in a peace era long after the war ended, there was no way to carry out terrorism near Frechenskaya without leaving a trace. From the outset, considering death and entering with it in mind, Ivan felt a strong sense of camaraderie. He let out a deep sigh. Now, there shouldn't be another terror. You failed. It's just soliloquy. No need for an answer. Ivan sat beside him, gazing at the sky. From the side, Fellows' rough breathing could be heard. When you fail and get abandoned, they'll simply say it was a terror caused by a few radical elements. Your superiors will explain it that way to the Union as well. Because of your existence, the Union's suspicion has probably skyrocketed. Naturally, you won't foolishly plan the next terror. What do you wish for? What should I do? You have three choices: to remain captive and be dragged to Frechenka. Then, you'll receive a warm welcome at the headquarters of the Kraslov Investigation Command. You'll be held accountable for attempting to assassinate a national figure. After that, the Investigation Command will fabricate a story, labeling this guy as the Crown Prince spy, and launch a political offensive. Of course, severe torture and magical imprisonment will follow, or, to break free and return to your homeland, the Investigation Command will tail him. Even if this guy manages to escape quickly, there's no way he'll return safely to his stronghold near Frechenka. Therefore, even if he manages to survive, he'll face suspicion. A betrayer who clung to the enemy to survive. He was likely to become a pawn among the demons, or be interrogated and executed by the demons. But, finally, do you understand your situation? Kill me. You've been rejected by your own kind. You can't go back or move forward. The only place left is the afterlife. Ivan clenched the axe and raised it. Slowly, he gripped the guy's horns. Fellows closed his eyes tightly and murmured quietly, "Even if you wander through the valley of death, do not be afraid. I will shelter you." A prayer of the Demon King, heard too many times. During the time when the Demon King was alive, the last words of all demons were generally the same. They died depicting the Demon King fanatically. Therefore, Ivan also knew the following passage: "I am the crucifix of the darkest night. I am the lighthouse in the stormy sea. I am your cradle and your fortress. Do not be afraid. I am your refuge." Ivan whispered, holding the horn of Fellows. "Are your parents still alive? What? If not, I run an orphanage." "What on earth are you talking about now?" "Caring for war orphans with nowhere to go, regardless of nationality or race." 4 years ago, when the Demon King died and Ivan decided to retire, the order from the superiors was as follows: kill Chiliongjiang and come back. It meant to go and die. It was an order given to all members of the Annihilation Unit. The Annihilation Unit, which had 8 strike teams, had only one surviving strike team after that order. When he returned successful, Elizabeth stamped his retirement application, crying, "Live as if dead. Be inconspicuous." Sorry for not preventing the order. Thankful just for being alive. Even when the names of all those who had left were forgotten, the honor of all those who had left would be eternal. So, if you only want to survive, you can abandon yourself and live as if forgotten, as if dead. I'm not qualified for that. Everyone is qualified for that. Loyalty and faith do not represent your life. If you wish, I will break your horn. It will be the last chain binding your body. But if you want, I'll lower the axe a bit more. It's the last choice to live like a human or leave like one. At Ivan's words, Fellows closed his eyes, exhaling a deep sigh. Inhaling briefly again. "I want to live." Good thinking. Thunk. Another name was added to the roster of residents at the Saint Basilica Orphanage. Orphan, in their 50s, of demon origin. After the failed assassination of Esidus, the threat from the demons increased significantly. The difficulty of Isabel's tutorial was, in other words, Ivan's own fault for failing in his actions, and that meant the tutorial doesn't progress simultaneously. It wasn't a game where events were handled at the same time for each character created, but rather, there was a time difference in the events experienced by each starting character. Ivan stroked his chin, lost in thought. Demons weren't simply moving like predetermined AIs. Like everyone else in this world, no one here was just an NPC. Even events progressing based on cliches could ultimately face fluid outcomes depending on variables. So, what could one expect? What should one do? Ivan turned his gaze to Isabel. She was watching the survivors with sad eyes. Save these guys and let them graduate. It's an academy-themed world. It has to be that way. Even if there are no players, characters, or NPCs, at least that one thing shouldn't change. It's not too late for overthinking after that. Uncle, if I hadn't boarded this train today, would the families of those people, the ones on this train, would they have survived? The dead weren't NPCs sacrificed in a cutscene. Probably, that's how it would have been. Ivan answered, looking at the dimly lit night sky. Do you know how many people the hero killed? What? At least an estimated 30,000 a year, including indirect casualties. The number of people who died, pushed into a losing battlefield to attract the attention of the demon army to support the hero's operation. The hero's party is fundamentally an assassination group to kill the 7 dragons and the demon king. So, the idea was to give them a distraction in a different direction to catch them off guard. As a fundamental strategy in the art of war, there were times when defeat was deliberately enforced on another front to support the infiltration of the hero party. Everyone present at that moment knew that fact. The heroes, me, even the soldiers at the forefront. But even then, the hero smiled. Otherwise, if one were to imagine their failure, lament their shortcomings, if one were to be crushed by their burden, if all the lives lost for their sake were in vain. So, the hero chose to smile, even in times when hope was as scarce as finding a star in the split sky, because he had to be a beacon of hope for everyone. For when he crumbled, the United Kingdom would fall. Look, Ivan raised his hand, pointing towards the sky. In the east, the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of blue. In the west, the moon had already hidden its face. But even there, in the far distance, even in the brightest times, the star shone, just like it did in the darkest night. Ah, that star, the burden your father carried in those days, is now the one you inherit. Being a hero doesn't mean being the strongest, the bravest. Yes, we call those who never kneeled to any burden and never lost their smile in any moment heroes. So, now, you must become their hero. Looking at the survivors gathered in sorrow, Ivan gently pressed her head. Maximilian's daughter, Isabel, lift your head and stand tall. The sorrowful receive sympathy, but admiration follows those who always smile. Embrace hope, rise, and live, remembering gratitude before guilt for someone's sacrifice. Live, proving to everyone that their sacrifice was not in vain. Like the star, always shining brightly even beside the largest moon, clearly radiating even by the rising sun. As a symbol of hope, like that. Isabel stared blankly at Ivan, then suddenly snapped back to reality. Do you happen to have any thoughts about shaving that beard? None, Ivan replied with disgust. Ep 5. Morning Star. Chapter 17. 17-6. The status window opened on the first day of school. 1. At the end of February, the streets near Sengunsk University were crowded with people. It was finally time for the entrance ceremony of the institution established by the royal decree, the foremost educational institution of its time. Having taken the entrance exam in November of the previous year, one could say they had been waiting for this moment for a long time. At this point, amidst the chaos of Frechenkai merchants trying to pick the pockets of freshmen and their families who had come from distant lands, various traditional games including pickpocketing were rampant. Despite the biting cold of the early spring morning, excited and happy freshmen, unable to conceal their emotions, passed through the entrance of Sengunsk University, while the older students looked at them with pity. What's that? It meant everything was normal until someone pointed to the sky and made a bewildered sound. One by one, people pointing fingers at the sky increased. From noblemtl.com. Soon, when the long shadow covered the courtyard of Sengunsk University, obscuring the morning sun. A flying ship, an aerial battleship, insane. Isn't that Kalyan's flagship? The multitude gathered in front of the courtyard was engulfed in panic. Your Highness, Kalyan's warship is in the Frechenka airspace right now. Unbelievable. Even I have eyes. A silver-haired palace official twisted his hair while sharpening his knife. Clearly, Elphara said they would come via Talis, right? Well. Ha 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 ha. Yes, they even used a concealment cloak above the clouds. Right. The recent weather has been unpredictable. That's why we couldn't confirm whether Kalyan's dignitaries were coming by land or crossing the airspace with an armed ship. It makes sense. No, sir. Logically, how could we plant agents in Kalyan? That place is its elven territory. How do we plant people there without getting caught? When an intelligence officer sweated profusely, repeatedly muttering, "I'm screwed if I report this to headquarters." In such an era when peace had become a vulgar joke, a warship was descending from the sky. It was early spring. Ep6. The status window opened on the first day of school. Elizabeth shouldn't kill the elf. Ivan continued to walk, ignoring the people still caught in confusion and contemplating. Perhaps their thoughts were obvious. No, just looking at you, it's clear that only the hero party members were being targeted for terrorism. How messed up is your border control for us to end up like this? Is Elphara really a treasure of our country's army? How can we trust you? Our kids will protect us now. Good job. Please cooperate well. It was hard to argue back. Isabel and Icodist were caught up in the train derailment, and it was almost a miracle that they all survived. Even Elizabeth had received Ivan's warning in advance. But who would dare to provoke a Kraslov in this era? In order not to die, Elizabeth must have felt unjust. She probably didn't expect there were such crazy people. Anyway, this incident could be passed off as some kind of happening. Even the elves of Kalyan wouldn't commit diplomatic impropriety beyond armed protest. If I say there will be a lot of terrorism in the academy in the future, your stomach will crumble. Seeing Liza, the Iron Blood, cry again, it was quite painful, but he decided to bear it to avoid further insults. Originally, he didn't even want to meet Elizabeth. Well, it's a bit awkward, isn't it? Elizabeth used to write letters quite often, and Ivan returned all the letters neatly. The biggest reason was that he didn't want to talk to the superior for personal reasons, and the second biggest reason was that he didn't want to get involved with the royals. If he had known that he would be promoted to the commanding officer of the extinction unit in a few years, he should have been more careful. It's something to reflect on. When she first wrote the letter, she was only 14. Could anyone have expected that she would become the commanding officer of the extinction unit in just 5 years? Moreover, at that time, he was in the royal guard of the Sun King. The scene of the princess and Saddam talking could be drawn into political attacks as soon as someone noticed it. Misunderstandings that the great Sun King secretly sent people to support Elizabeth had to be avoided. "Oh, sir?" He was lost in thought and suddenly heard a familiar voice. Then someone rushed over and tried to pat him on the shoulder. Ivan lightly turned his body to avoid it and reached for the hilt at his waist. Nothing was caught. It was only then that he remembered that he had left the axe in the office. What the hell? Are you alive? Can't even say hello. Are you scared of living? I guess Tias's greeting has changed a lot since then. You saw me reaching for my waist, didn't you? Is this how you greet each other in Kraslov? Huh? Is this okay with your comrades who shared life and death? It was Isabel. She approached him with a smile on her face, without any attendance. It doesn't seem like you're going to school. Are you a drill instructor, a professor? Not a night department, right? You won't be a knight. Oh, don't say anything. I'll guess you didn't used to have this kind of personality. You're supposed to live with a smile, right? Isabel brightened with a cheerful smile. Because Ivan's expression resembled that of my father so much, Ivan unconsciously smiled back. Well, I still don't like Lord August's attitude, and I find those pretentious smilers quite detestable. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be pretentious either. Excellent. Ivan genuinely thought so. After all, this guy was like a poorly socialized puppy from the start, barking at anyone. The type to reveal fear at the slightest. Considering he had changed his personality in just one night, Ivan considered himself to be more of an educator than he thought. A somewhat bewildering evaluation for Isabel, who had to fight demons to save about 80 citizens and rescue about 10 survivors that same night. Anyway, sir, number With your skills, are you a professor? Right? What department are you in? Physical education. Definitely physical education. It can't be the night department. Is there an assassination curriculum at the Jansk University? Do you think there is any educational institution teaching such things that would be useful in this world? Learning anything is good, except magic. That's really too difficult. It could be inconvenient for a knight not to use magic. Ahahaha. Because I'm in the night department. Ivan watched Isabel lively chatter for a while. Just as Isabel was fluently continuing her words, another group of people approached from afar. Miss. Isabel stiffened her expression coldly for a moment and quickly managed her expression. Ivan thought, looking at Oscar while adjusting his complexion. Then he soon cheerfully responded. Oh, Gonga, we see you here. Speak comfortably, miss. You may call me Oscar. Yes, next time. Oscar. Ivan's eyes sharpened. A very handsome blonde young man, surrounded by a group of female students, approached him with a bright smile. My, he really takes after his father. This guy, Ivan admired. Not only in appearance but even in the expression living off his well-endowed taste. The only difference might be the surrounding crowd. The female students of Jilva were quite tidy. In fact, it wasn't easy to meet women in those days. The only women at the parties were either holy maidens or thieves, and Patricia was just a newly turned 10-year-old kid, and Enrique was a vampire over 100 years old. Well, nice to meet you. I am TS's Oscar de Sashin. And you are? Ivan Petrovich. Excuse me, but may I ask about the young lady? Oh, I apologize. I don't know if you're aware, but the young lady here seems to be a dignitary of our nation, so I might unintentionally be a bit impolite. Anyone witnessing the peculiar sight of a bearded giant walking alongside the daughter of a hero would inevitably entertain such thoughts. Ivan, despite his reluctance to agree, understood it from Oscar's perspective. There was something suspicious about this man, especially considering the time when Isabel had been involved in the train incident. Oscar had set out 3 days after Isabel. It was because, even if Isabel were to die, he had no intention of accompanying her in death. And when news of Isabel's accident reached his advance towards Frichanka. Let's tear apart the souls of the Krasilov bears. A nation that forgets its history has no future. Remember the noble deeds of the hero, people of Tis. The streets of St. Matilene were filled with citizens holding such placards. What could be the issue when the hero's daughter went missing, not due to an accident abroad, but entangled in terrorism? Fortunately, news of Isabel being miraculously unharmed spread, and the protests disbanded. However, the heightened vigilance and mistrust in Tis couldn't be avoided. In the midst of all this, Oscar returned, having received stern words from his father, the national defender, Jilba. When you enroll, no matter what happens, make sure Isabel doesn't get a scratch. Even if I die, no matter how you think about it, her life is more precious than yours. You're truly something. Why didn't you switch her and me then? You said you were close with the hero. If I could have switched, I would have done it 20 years ago, son. Yulia and I wanted a daughter. Wow, that's really daring. Oscar, remembering the dignified lecture of the exemplary Tis Knights and the great national defender Jilba, struggled to maintain his composure. He's a faculty member at Yansk University. I've been quite rude. Given the recent unfortunate events, please pardon my impoliteness. May I ask which department you teach in? I haven't seen your name on the list of professors. At this point, Isabel's ears perked up. He wasn't a professor. He's a gardener. Excuse me, a gardener with that skill? Isabel looked at him in astonishment. Still, with eyes that revealed nothing and a thick beard hiding any expression, it was impossible to know what he was thinking. I really want to push him away, Isabel thought unintentionally before suddenly realizing. Huh? She soon let out an odd laugh and smacked Ivan's side. Ivan reflexively raised his hand to his waist, realizing there was no axe, and smoothly lowered his hand. Government agent, right? Secret agent or something? Wow, university life is really exciting. What could you possibly be hiding that you even have a government agent planted here? Isabel whispered like that and soon cleared her throat, organizing her expression. It's our little secret, okay? Understand? Don't go talking about it elsewhere, okay? If it's our little secret, you should be more careful with your words. Why is that? Am I the daughter of a hero? Solemn, discreet, justice. Did the hero act that way? As their whispered conversation extended, Oscar's expression strangely changed. Miss? Oh, Yes. Gonga Petrovich, thank you for guiding me. Wow, I almost got lost with just a blink if I hadn't asked. Goodbye. If there was a department of drama in the Jansk University Arts Department, Ivan seriously thought he should recommend Isabel to take a drama class. At that moment, in the main hall of Jansk University where the entrance ceremony preparations were in full swing, one person was staring blankly into the air. What is this? Status window? Congratulations. Chapter 18. 18-6. On the first day of school, the status window opened. Too many students don't even think about it, but in fact, the category of university staff includes many workers other than professors and teaching assistants. For example, security guards handle campus security and safety, or administrative assistants manage administrative tasks overall. Just like how the person cleaning the restaurant during meals is not easily noticeable, there are people who appear and disappear from the peripheral vision if you don't consciously pay attention. Gardeners are the same. That's why Elizabeth assigned Ivan as a gardener, not a conspicuous position like professors or teaching assistants, and at the same time, a position with no defined duties. Originally, a gardener is needed where there is a garden. But Jansk University had no gardens. It's only natural. There's no reason to waste land on a garden or a flower garden in the middle of the city. From NobleMTL.com. So, even if a princess made a space, no one could suspect anything. If it were a truly important person, or if Elizabeth was plotting something behind the scenes at the university, she would have assigned an agent to a more critical position. Prince Pa probably considered that one of Elizabeth's subordinates had discreetly employed an acquaintance. This level of wrongdoing is nothing more than a trivial offense prevalent in the kingdom, involving the common practice of securing employment for friends and reaping benefits. It is not illegal. In noble circles, such minor irregularities are even considered virtuous. As expected, it was here. Therefore, the gardener at Jansk University has plenty of time. Enough time for leisure activities. At this point, the leisure activity of the gardener at Jansk University was bomb disposal. They considered the patrol routes of the guards, the movement radius of the campus population, and the line of sight of each building. These guys are experts. Ivan narrowed his eyes as he removed the third explosive device. It was a crude magical bomb, making it difficult to identify the culprits. The reason Ivan identified and searched for the explosives was as follows. First, it is common sense for an attack to occur at the academy's entrance ceremony. Second, with bombers in the sky and the surveillance of the reconnaissance headquarters sharply heightened at this moment, only an expert organization could attack the academy. Thinking like this and reverse engineering the opponent's movements allows one to identify the location to plant the bomb, a place not noticeable to the guards. At the same time, a secluded area not exposed to civilians, plus, an angle not captured by anyone from the windows of each building. By exploring the intersection of these conditions, the bomb is found. At this point, it's not much different from harvesting potatoes. Once the location is roughly determined, walk over and pick it up casually. Now, who's responsible for this? That's all. The problem lies in this. There were too many suspects. Demons, although the least likely, are suspicious precisely because of that. These guys had enough motivation to terrorize Jansk University. But at the same time, if they were not scum, there would be no reason for them to commit such acts again immediately after the previous failure. Elves, on the contrary, are suspicious, but the motivation was faint. As they are still floating a battleship in the airspace above Jansk University, it is the easiest for them to carry out such actions. However, even if the elf were to commit such acts, the gains would be too small, considering it would jeopardize the favor of Kraslov. Prince Pa, presumably, he is the closest to being the culprit. These guys have the means and motivation to attack Jansk University, but today would have been difficult for them. The reconnaissance headquarters, directly hit by Elizabeth's anger, is on high alert and guarding the area around here. So, there are too many suspects. A secretive organization that cannot be identified has planted a very capable operative within the academy. This is just your average academy story. At this point, Ivan felt somewhat relieved. Yeah. It's only fitting for an academy story to have an attack during the entrance ceremony, with secret agents planted within the academy. Without a doubt. As if that wasn't enough, among the new students this time, there were no guys challenging others to duels, introducing themselves as centaurs, cowboys shooting pump-action rifles with leaves in their mouths, or peculiarly foul-mouthed little girl tankers. Ivan was uneasy because they were all missing. Ivan shook his head, smirked, and headed towards the next expected explosive area. And then, at that moment, a strange voice reached his ears, very faintly. "What's that again? Santa Claus?" Ivan's eyes sharply widened. Without showing any sign of noticing, he bent his waist. There was just the right amount of gravel. Casually, as if tying his shoelaces, Ivan grasped the gravel in his hand and threw it in the direction of the sound. Bang! A sound of something bouncing off. Simultaneously, Ivan's body shot out like lightning, straight towards the direction of the sound. Thud, thud. The sound of swift footsteps echoed, and Ivan eventually came to a stop. No trace remained. Disappeared without a trace through the multitude of people waiting for the entrance ceremony to end outside the Jansk University. Santa Claus, huh? Ivan chuckled mockingly as he turned around. Returning the same way, after a short while, neatly split gravel came into view. He meticulously broke down and reassembled the information. Swordsmanship, a young male or female, if male, at least prepubescent age. The voice is too blurry to identify precisely, it might take a couple more listens. Height, couldn't confirm. Quick reflexes, rapid reflexes, probably, sensing from an angle. An ability hard to possess at a student level, but the possibility of being a student is highly likely. He turned and changed direction. This time, towards the campus, towards the most dangerous place in the Jansk University, towards the auditorium where Elizaveta was attending the entrance ceremony, and towards the nearby field control room of the surveillance headquarters, which must be the Santa Claus. In this world, there is no folk legend called Santa Claus. Naturally, Christmas doesn't exist. There is no righteous old man like a red rogue who puts candy and toys in socks. That's why even a mere muttered soliloquy triggered such a sensitive response. So, possession. Did this guy also write the Gratitude 5,700 character critique, or is it a product of some coincidence? Hit by a truck, perhaps? Let's not consider diving into the Han River, that's too outdated. Of course, it could be the original author. There are many cases like that. For what reason, and in what manner did he land in this world? But one thing can be certain. He knows that this game is an academy genre. The only reason for the possessor to enter college or get a job is that, in that case, this guy knows their original, knows what will unfold later, knows the ending. Hey, wait. Stop there. This is a restricted area, called Mitri. What? Where did you hear what from just now? Thunk. Ivan broke the arm of the uniformed soldier blocking his way. As soon as the reacting soldier drew a pistol from his sleeve, Ivan disassembled it like water flowing, turning it into pieces. The soldier whose arm was caught stared blankly at the grip left in his hand. In the next moment, click, click. Gun barrels sprang out instantly. 5. Good training condition. Also, good disguise. The 5 soldiers surrounding him each had a different appearance. Like ordinary civilians you could see anywhere. After scanning the surrounding soldiers once, Ivan took a deep breath, exhaled briefly. Anger surged. Anxiety gnawed at patience. Called Mitri. Do you know, Lieutenant? Please don't cause a disturbance here, and let's go to a quiet place. Ivan. Yes, my name is Ivan Petrovich, Special Operations Unit veteran. Are you here? I was the last runner, sir. Excuse me, but may I confirm your face? The soldier, who had been kneeling, held by Ivan, cautiously raised his head, slowly lowering the grip he had been holding. He spread his hands wide. He scrutinized Ivan's face with a perplexed expression for a while, then raised one hand to gently cover Ivan's nose. Good Lord! Is this really the small Ivan? Cold sweat dripped from the soldier's face as he examined Ivan's eyebrows, nose bridge, forehead, and more. He quickly gestured with his eyes to signal the surrounding soldiers. Bowing politely, he spoke. Lieutenant Petrovich, it's an honor to meet you. Name? Osip Solonov. You probably don't know me. I come from the 3rd Strike Unit, and we've only met once, a long time ago. I remember now. Osip. Ivan released the soldier's arm and stepped back. Osip brushed his knees off, stood up, and extended his hand politely. Ivan shook hands with him. Do not mourn those who left first. I stand in the same ranks as them. I heard you perished, Lieutenant. I distinctly remember seeing Lieutenant's nameplate at the National Cemetery. I, too, Didn't think there would be survivors in the 3rd Strike Unit. The finest men of our time are the ones who survived. All of us are like that. The last mission that every strike unit of the Annihilation Division received was the Chil-Yong-Jang assassination. Therefore, including Ivan's strike unit, the only one that survived. If there were any other survivors, they were just remnants indebted to the most outstanding men. Ivan patted Ossip's shoulder twice and spoke again. Bring Dmitri, and inform the personnel office that we need the list of all students and staff. The list of everyone attending the entrance ceremony, VIPs, their families, acquaintances, relatives. Get the list of everyone who can access Yansk University right now. Yes, Lieutenant. Hey, tell Colonel Chukatov it's an emergency. Agents who had missed the unfolding situation and wore confused expressions hastily left their positions. Looking at the crowded auditorium where the entrance ceremony was in full swing, Ivan took a slow, deep breath. The possessed, whether Korean or not, it didn't matter. They were Earthlings, compatriots from the homeland. Sadly, that was the case. Yes, it was bitter. Kim Sun-woo and Ivan both felt it. But they had to be eliminated. Information about the ending was needed. Variables leading to the ending had to be eliminated. And the most important thing is, I'm not an NPC. Ivan closed his eyes. I'm not an NPC. My memories, my experiences, my skills are not just part of a prologue. I'm not some NPC. My life isn't just a fleeting background story. I am. To survive, I must go back. So, I'd say there are more reasons to kill you than to keep you alive. Before I hear the story of Ivan Petrovich in your damn original work. Before it's too late. Absolutely. Gasp. Cough. What the hell is wrong with that crazy guy? A first strike monster? Damn it, I've never heard of such a thing. Damn it, where did things go wrong? Gasping for breath, drenched in cold sweat, suddenly a familiar voice was heard. Father. From NobleMTL.com. You've come. What have you done? Never mind. Pathetic. Father. Sit down. Creating such a fuss just by going to the bathroom. You're still the same. This damn mischievous youngest. If it's mischievous, isn't it supposed to be the classic fantasy where you're beaten up right after possessing someone? I was supposed to brilliantly thwart this academy assault and start a turning point in the atmosphere, but suddenly the quest got cancelled. D-rank quest academy assault. Cancelled. The academy is under attack by an unknown group. Please stop the attack on the auditorium and undergraduate facilities during the admission ceremony. Objective: remove explosives within the campus. 3/3 removed. Optional objective: eliminate intruders. Cancelled. Optional objective: protecting freshman 0322. Cancelled. Reward: cancelled. Damn it, lost an important early quest. Wasn't this academy assault supposed to be the protagonist's debut stage? It was a golden opportunity to give heroines and future allies a clear impression, and gain favor with the instructors. The quest suddenly got cancelled just for me. And when I hurriedly ran over, I bumped into a giant resembling Santa Claus. And what's this now? S-rank quest: Gardener of St. Jansk University. You catch his eye. Requesting luck. Objective: deal with the Gardener of St. Jansk University, Ivan Petrovich. Optional objective: persuade Ivan Petrovich. Optional objective: conceal information. Additional objective: survive. Failure penalty: death. Chapter 19, 19-6. The status window opened on the first day of school. 3. Senior, it's a bit awkward to see us in a place like this, isn't it? An orphanage would be better. An orphanage. We should meet there. Did I become a regular sponsor for nothing? It's urgent. Sigh. I guess you came here in a hurry because of the senior's personality. Why did you hit the kids again? Seriously? Just talk. Dmitri grumbled as he led Ivan to a nearby cafe. The second floor of the cafe near the university was bustling with numerous citizens waiting for the entrance ceremony to end. Of course, that's what it seemed like. As Dmitri led Ivan through the stairs to the second floor, the cafe that had been bustling with noise fell silent for a moment. Just do what you were doing. Act normal. As Dmitri waved his hand, the agents who were filling the cafe returned to being ordinary citizens. In the midst of it all, a table strategically vacated from the view of both the window and the stairs remained empty. Sit down. Well, this place used to be famous, but I guess we can't use it anymore. Do you know how difficult it is to make a place in the middle of Prychanka where you won't be noticed? Sorry, it's fine. So, what did you bring? Dmitri smiled as he extended his hand, and Ivan pulled out 3 small explosive devices from his embrace. Dimitri's expression disappeared in an instant. Seeing his hand smoothly moving into the sleeve, Ivan spoke. "I left out the detonator. You should have said that first. Damn, that it was close. If you were going to be so suspicious, you shouldn't have hired me in the first place. Why say such bitter things? It's a job where even our parents should be suspicious." Dimitri shrugged and examined the explosives. After a while, a deep smile appeared on his face. "Interesting. Inside St. Jansk University, huh? Sure. The expert, I suppose. Just by looking at it, yes. 3 of them. Judging by the magical energy, it doesn't seem like a building explosion or political assassination. Looks more like a diversion." "Yeah, there must have been a separate infiltration team. No one from our side was missed. Definitely not the prince's group. We've kept an eye on them." Dimitri chuckled, clapping his hands together. Soon, an agent disguised as an ordinary middle-aged woman approached. "Send this to the headquarters magical division." "Yes, Lieutenant Colonel." "And the items? Are they ready?" "Yes." She pulled out a thick bundle of documents from her basket. Dimitri took the papers, quickly skimmed through them, and pushed them towards Ivan. "This is what the senior asked for. We worked really hard to prepare it in a hurry. Even if your highness wasn't sincerely supporting the senior, well, thank you. Much appreciated." "Don't mention it." "Oh, the senior said we should meet sometime." "Is the timing okay?" "It might be difficult for a while." Ivan stood up, holding the documents. As he turned to leave, a voice came from behind. "Senior, your gaze is a bit distant. Do you know?" Turning around, Dimitri looked at him with a serious expression. The shadowy gaze beneath his hat shone vividly, scrutinizing Ivan accurately. "Relax. This isn't the battlefield here." "Well, coming from someone who suggested working once we've gathered retired folks, it's a bit ironic." "Loosen up a bit, look around, and enjoy life. Even Her Highness and we don't expect perfection from our seniors." Ivan left without responding, carrying the documents. Dimitri chuckled, tilting his head. "That's why people should experience love." Stuck in a rut without any sunlight, how dull it must be, right? Lieutenant Petrovich. "Indeed, the small Ivan." "Your reputation is not unfounded." "Impressive. When I first saw him, I almost pissed myself. How can someone who has been idle for 4 years be like that?" "Anyway," Dimitri spoke, tapping the table lightly. "Stick to people. That senior, don't leave him alone. If his actions cross the line, should I stop him?" "What are you talking about? Do you want to die?" "Just watch." "Watch from a very, very far distance." "Well, let's see how far he can cross the line." Whether he was angry or not, he probably wanted to find the agent who planted explosives and personally jump into action. Even if he tries his best, he will probably just scare a few students, and it will be nothing more than a show of anger towards Ivan. While Dimitri was thinking about such things, Ivan was taking out an axe and a healing potion in the principal's office. It cannot be told to anyone. The story that this world is actually nothing more than a kind of game and may be governed by a sophisticated system. So, I have to do it myself. Ivan sincerely believed that and spread the report he received from Dimitri on the table. List of school staff. List of freshmen. Personal information of undergraduate students. This year, there are over 300 freshmen. Since Jansk University is a 3-year program, the total number of undergraduate students is close to 1,000. Considering all the staff, including faculty, professors and assistants, as well as security, administrative staff, admissions office, etc. If we also include students who have entered graduate school and students who have postponed graduation for reasons such as taking a leave of absence, total 1733 people. One more thing there. We need to look into the families of students who have the authority to approach the entrance ceremony. If there is enough possibility to step on the university campus on the day of the entrance ceremony, everyone can be included in the suspect pool. That is, if we consider dignitaries from each country and the families of students themselves. Total 2,429 people. I know you're in there. Ivan pressed the stack of documents classified by category on the table with a heavy thud. Thud. I don't think it will be easy to find. Arrogance is the sharpest dagger to kill an agent. But it won't take long. Promise. The avatars of the academy can never lead a quiet school life. This is common sense. They will thwart raids, monopolize power, and acquire visions somewhere. The world of the academy essentially follows the standard platform called Nade Nade. There's no other way. Who would like a story of attending school and graduating normally? Therefore, if this guy knows their original work, he would undoubtedly mimic the movements of the protagonist in the original work. All avatars live like that. Even Kim Sun-woo's initial thoughts when he first avatars were monopolizing power and spreading a modern culture. So, all avatars are intensely selfish, full of variables, and it's not strange for them to make unexpected moves. After the fierce war that NPCs portended, they would have wanted to comfortably enroll in the academy and enjoy a pleasant game avatar. They wouldn't want to know or understand the lives of countless people passing by in the background setting. It would just be fun. It would feel like enjoying a well-made theme park. I already understand that this is just venting, that it's hatred without a destination, and maybe it's a base jealousy. What is this, Santa Claus? A casual remark, but that one word clearly revealed how he treated others. Not hiding the fact that he avatars, just enjoying it. That one word disheveled Ivan's heart. That one word that seemed to look at the other as just an object. Lieutenant, did you see? Wow, I was really awesome, right? It's been 7 battles, but I blocked them all. Don't speak. Ahahaha, if I do it again, I think I can do it again. Too bad. At that time, I should have tilted the shield a little more to the right. Shinavika, don't open your mouth. If I did that, maybe I could have saved that idiot Shasha. Really regrettable. Lieutenant, seriously. It's almost done. Almost there. Just a little more. Hold on a little more. Go and get hit by Shasha. But you won't be lonely, even in heaven or hell. We've managed our connections well, right? Please. Quiet. The blood cools faster. Shinavika. Please. Lieutenant, live for a long time. Come as late as possible. If you come quickly, I'll give you a send-off. Their story is not just a background setting. Ivan was having nightmares among scattered papers. From noblemtl.com. It's a memory from a long time ago. Don't mourn those who left first. I too stand among them. Their stories are not mere backgrounds. We survived instead of the most excellent men of this era. We all did. Their history is not some script. It must not be. In his nightmare, Ivan murmured slowly, while feeling the tapping on his back by Kim Sun-woo. Kimchi stew, spicy rice cakes, nachos with cheese, stir-fried pork, raw fish bibimbap, Sokcho-style raw fish soup, warm ramen. Hometown, home, Korea, Seoul, rooftop room, parents. Subway station, convenience store, nightlife, hometown, must return. Firmly decide in your heart, don't waver. Face it head on. It's okay. We are not alone. Picking up things that soothe the heart haphazardly until the night ends. After the semester began, Esides found herself in a difficult situation. No one wanted to eat with her. In this school where nobles from all over the world gather, the title of royalty naturally shouldn't become a reason for ostracism. However, for the young students barely in their 20s, seeing the bodyguard of the royalty, a middle-aged man, muscular, wielding an axe, always vigilant, could indeed be a considerable burden. Oh, I'm screwed because of my uncle. Is that my fault? Isn't the problem those idiots bothering our nephew in the first place? Then why do they stop the girls too? Your uncle already heard those women badmouthing our nephew behind his back. Yugh. My college life. My life. Dad, I hate you. The strongest music major who became a victim of bullying on the first day of school ran off, sobbing. Chapter 20, 20-6. The status window opened on the first day of school. 4, screening and narrowing it down to 3. Maybe. It took 3 days to deduce this far. Ivan pressed his stiffened eyelids and stood up. The criteria for screening were as follows: sudden emergence of a prominent figure, drastic changes in personality or tendencies, displaying peculiar behavior. If it weren't for the support of the intelligence headquarters, obtaining this information would have been impossible. It was a task that required directly digging into the noble circle. If there's a problem, it's these guys. One is an orphan, admitted through a practical skills scholarship program. The other 2 are from the nobility, meaning they are figures within the royal prince's faction. It's delicate. Even if Ivan is just an undercover agent, tracing back their roots will inevitably connect them to the intelligence headquarters. And the intelligence headquarters is Elizabeth's right arm. If they recklessly provoke the nobility and get caught, it will harm Elizabeth's political influence. Kidnapping all 3 might be tricky. Ivan, if Dmitri were here, would have scoffed at the idea, a sound he would have made while venting his frustrations with Elizabeth. He tapped the table. One is a sensational freshman who entered on a full scholarship. Despite being an orphan, this individual has already attracted attention from various institutions. Provoking them recklessly would lead to unfavorable consequences. The remaining two noble siblings are both from prestigious families within the nobility. Naturally, they cannot be kidnapped indiscriminately. If Ivan were truly a possessor, he might act more boldly, but for now, there's only suspicion, and there's no confirmed evidence. Therefore, let's mark these three and observe for a while. Killing them is always an option. Even kidnapping is not an impossible task. But for a clean operation, without any repercussions, preparation is necessary. So, after 3 days, Ivan decides to start working at the academy. From that day on, rumors spread at St. Jansk University that monsters were appearing. Trapped in the shackles of being ostracized by some inexplicable malevolence, Isekai had few choices left. Fortunately, the semester has just begun. No matter how important first impressions are, there should be ways to turn the situation around. For instance, one option was to look for a person who is too risky to mess with, like a certain uncle's daughter, dad's friend's daughter. Whether it was a promise between parents or an astonishing coincidence, the members of the warrior party weren't all gathered in the same grade. Even if the uncle has no particular thoughts, he wouldn't dare approach a warrior's child recklessly. That's how this lunch gathering came about. Nice to meet you, Anil's daughter, right? Is it okay to call you that? Oh, that just means dad's daughter. Among ourselves, feel free to call me Isekai. Well, even so, you're a princess, right? Ha 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 ha, a princess, indeed. I've never been treated like this before, so it's making me tear up a bit. Sidious shook the hand of the lovely girl, her tears glistening. Oh, I was a bit rude, wasn't I? I apologize. You're acquainted with Isabel, right? You're a freshman in the night department, correct? May I ask your name? I'm Yuri Frank, Miss Sidious. Feel free to call me Yuri. Sidious, stop chattering and step aside. Oh, you're quite the distinguished lady, aren't you? I'm sorry, I didn't know the list of noble families in the Kristlev court. No, what are you talking about? No way. Nobility, that's a big deal. Isabel chuckled and lightly tapped Sidious. This one's got a lineage even more prestigious than royalty. Not understanding the situation, Sidious hesitated for a moment. Blushing, Yuri spoke up. I'm just an orphan. Frank isn't even my real last name. And Yuri is a boy's name. But surviving on the streets is tough with a girl's name. Yuri laughed confidently. Isabel smirked and turned her head towards Sidious. She's our full scholarship student. She wields a sword really well. Wow, better than Isabel. Of course, even better than Oscar. Honestly, it surprised me. Where did such a talent come from? Don't exaggerate. I was just lucky. If luck helped us win, then that's skill. Sidious felt a warm sensation in his heart. Yes, this is it. This feels right. A vibrant spring, warm sunlight, praising each other's skills while sharing a meal, engaging in friendly competition. This is the romance he had envisioned. Unconsciously, she wiped away the image of her uncle, who was probably chatting away with the night department students by now. Isabel, Sidious, and the freshman. Ivan observed them from a tree, flipping through his notes. He couldn't hear their conversation, but he could employ an exceptionally accurate level of lip reading. The casual talk flowed. The names were Yuri or Yuli. Both were names in the freshman roster, but the likelihood of Yuri being the one on his suspect list was higher. And that's where the problem arose. Of all things, the suspect was in contact with the hero party. And on top of that, her name happened to be Yuri. Naturally, in the culture of the Kristlev court, that name was male. But, in Korea, and if you broaden the scope to Northeast Asia, it's used as a female name. If there's a woman using the name Yuri, there's a high probability she's a possessor. A single red underline was drawn on the dragon's deck. What's that kid up to? Enrique, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, stared blankly at his disciple. He was usually so sensitive that it would be difficult to approach him even on this street. But he was unaware of how focused he was, not even realizing his own approach. She turned her gaze in the direction Ivar was looking. In the distance, some freshmen were making noise on a bench. A common sight. Is that Isabel? That one looks like Sidious. They used to be close, so I don't know who that guy is. He had intended to visit the intelligence headquarters briefly when he heard about the situation, but ended up facing the sight of his disciple trailing freshman, playing the role of a field agent. It doesn't seem like there's any taste to it. Was it just a show? Expressionless eyes, perfect concealment even in a casual moment. The usually are. He shrugged and hid behind the shadows. Eugene. Let's go together. What's the afternoon class? I'm going to the Introduction to Biblical Interpretation. I'm in Gospel Original Language Reading. Sorry. No. Later. Let's see each other later. Have a good class. After laughing and seeing off a student whose name he couldn't remember, the young man called Eugene fixed his face and walked down the lecture hall corridor. Annoying and confusing, too. If he had known there would be so much to learn, he would never have chosen theology. But at the time, it seemed like the best option. I can't do physical work. This was a natural conclusion. Having never even held a kitchen knife in his life, it was impossible for him to wield a sword against monsters or demons now. Yet, choosing a career that completely excluded combat was also difficult. At the very least, he had to choose a profession that directly went out to the field. Hence, theology. Through the priest training, he could learn various buffs, healing skills, and even holy strike spells. Plus, I have a knack for swordsmanship. The protagonist of Northern Great Sword Genius, Eugene, was a sword genius. This was clearly proven by the system. When all the surrounding freshmen showed low-level growth, exhibiting mediocre combat skills at best, Eugene had achieved a remarkable feat of reaching sword mastery level 5, from the first day of his possession. He was at the level of a first-year instructor in the Knight Department at the Academy of Yansk University's Department of Knighthood. In other words, he had already surpassed the level of a freshman. But the problem was that learning swordsmanship technically and utilizing it to slaughter people were entirely different matters. For a modern Korean who had never twisted a chicken neck once, this was an extremely challenging task. So, the priest is Choi Gondi, a rearguard not needing to step into the front line, in a simple occupation that ends with a heel or a swing of the sword, and if they happen to wield the blade with more than average skill, a picturesque chicken-like figure emerges. It has always been advised to pursue a job one excels at as a side gig. After all, isn't it natural for an idol with acting skills to gain more popularity than a professional actor? The peculiar problems arising here are, first, the theology curriculum at Sangyansuk University is as demanding as it gets, even compared to modern Korea. Second, a stone-eyed hemodialysis Santa Claus is on the chase. What on earth is he? Such events were absent in the original novel. In fact, the original novel was set in a completely different world. It wasn't a subtle red imperial state, and there were no demon kings or warrior parties. Just a mundane family drama where a bad wizard family fights over approximately 1,000 episodes. The only commonality between this world and that novel is the familiar skill tree, status screen, and the familiar family situation. Northern Grand Duke. How could there be a Northern Grand Duke when this country called Kraslov is already in the north? And why is his level not showing? I know that the level indication changes to apostrophe when it surpasses the normal level range, but this is going too far. Why does the Academy Gardener's level look like that? And even more despairingly, he remembered that his family head's level is 59. As he deliberately turned his gaze away, a bearded giant on a tree nearby was staring at him. No one around seemed to notice, so he was trying to ignore it, but, expanded intuition level 3, faintly showed a blurry figure from a distance. From noblemtl.com. They're tailing 3 people. Enrique was sure. At first, he thought it was an order to protect the warrior party members, but he felt something was off and decided to follow them. The problem is, those 3 have no commonality. One is in theology, another in night studies, and the third in magic studies. Even considering their backgrounds, one is the son of a duke, another an orphan, and the last one the youngest daughter of a novelist. It just doesn't match at all. And then, there's their way of living. Growling like a tiger crouched in the bushes, glaring as if they were looking at some enemy. Aren't we not supposed to mess with them? The orphan kid almost broke down the scholarship door, got admitted, and is now receiving love calls from everywhere. The 2 noble kids are from noble families. Clearly, they belong to the royal prince faction. It's not advisable to mess with them, and to top it all, they are both in magic and theology. The only commonality is that the department heads are not from Kraslov. Theology is, of course, handled by a saint, and magic studies are managed by Kallian's elves. In other words, If you attack an undergraduate, it becomes a big problem. No way. Seriously? No way. Enrique smirked, but deep down, he was considering that the lunatic might have some reason to do such a thing. The rogue of the hero party, the vampire reigning over the back alleys of Friginkaya for a century, was always ready to intervene in emergency situations, stalking a student stalker in the meantime. He saw my eyes. I was trailing him from quite a distance away from the theology and main building, yet he had noticed me. Ivan stared at the youth from the suspect list with his sunken eyes. Yevgeny Nubikov Karamchin. Yevgeny is an ordinary name. Nothing special about it. However, the name Yevgeny is also used as Eugene in the Asian cultural sphere. Naturally, it carries a different meaning from the Catholic Saint Eugenio's. In other words, it is a personal name that is commonly used in both Asia and Europe. Therefore, the possibility of this guy listed in the roster being a possessor is high. Ivan drew 2 red underlines. Detection of concealment, suspicious movement, suspicious name,